Hey everyone. So in this video, we're going to go through 100 Microsoft Azure job interview questions. These questions are divided into different sections. As you can see, for cloud concept, we are going to go through 6 questions. Azure virtual machine, we are going to go through 8 questions. Azure App Service, and so on. So there are different sections with different number of questions. Each of these questions are formatted in this particular manner. Like I read out the question, then we populate the short answer, and I will give you explanation. Towards the bottom of that flashcard, you can see a link where you can actually go and read additional information as well. On top of that, you can actually go ahead and download this particular documentation to read out further explanation, additional resources to understand that. You can consider this as a handbook to further elevate your knowledge on Azure. A quick disclaimer, even though I work at Microsoft, these questions have nothing to do with Microsoft. These are not the official Microsoft interview question. These are simply, I just want to help you understand what Azure is or help you with these job interviews. Like I showed, you can go ahead and download the study guide. I will make sure to put the link in the description. I hope you're going to find this one useful. I will see you on the next one. Take care. First, we are going to go through questions on cloud concept. Here we have 6 questions in this section. Let's look at the first question. What are the key benefits of cloud computing and how do they help businesses? Here the interviewer is trying to understand what's your current knowledge about what is cloud computing and how can it help their particular business. So you have to tweak your answer based on what industry they are, what type of business they run, and things like that. First, let me help you understand what are the key points you need to highlight. Your answer should include points like scalability, elasticity, agility, high availability, disaster recovery, things like that. So how can you craft the message? So first and foremost, tell that, hey, cloud computing offers several benefits. And if you are focusing on scalability, cloud computing enables businesses to adapt or adjust cloud computing resources quickly according to the demand of that particular business. Other points you can mention about scalability is it allows handling of increased workloads during peak hours. Or you can tell cloud computing offers scaling up and scaling down of these services during off-peak hours time to save cost. So these are some of the pointers you can use to address scalability benefit. Second, how do you address elasticity? You can mention things like cloud systems automatically adjust resources to match workload changes. That is directly in relation to the elasticity benefit of cloud computing. Second is cloud computing allows you to provision and deprovision resources according to real-time needs. Or you can mention things like cloud computing helps you optimize performance and cost efficiency. One of the example you can probably use here is about an e-commerce website. Typically, it can handle varying traffic loads seamlessly without any sort of manual intervention because it is hosted in the cloud. The next point is agility. So how do you help the interviewer understand how you know about agility? You can talk about agility by telling that businesses can quickly develop, test, and launch application if you host your services in the cloud. And because the cloud services are readily available, this reduces the time to go to market significantly if you have any particular product or offering you want to launch immediately. Another point what you can use is this enables faster innovation and prompt response to market changes. Or you can ask like, hey, do you have in-house development team? If you have in-house development team, they can actually streamline their workflows and improve productivity using the cloud platforms like Azure DevOps, things like that. The next point you might want to highlight is the high availability benefit of cloud computing. Here you're going to highlight the fact like cloud services are continuously operational with minimal downtime. So thus providing high availability all the time. And this is achieved through redundant systems and failover mechanism each cloud provider have in their backend. So when we go through advanced topics in the coming question, we will dive deep into the SLA aspect of high availability, what are the redundant services they use in the backend and things like that. The next advantage of high availability you can provide is like cloud provides uninterrupted service even in the event of hardware failures or other disruptions because of that redundant service I talked about. If you are a beginner, if you feel like some of these terms are alien to you or very difficult to comprehend, please don't worry. Upcoming questions will help you clarify your doubts you may have in this regards. The next point you could highlight is businesses can rely on consistent performance and avoid any sort of costly outages because you don't have to worry about managing this infrastructure yourself. You're leaving that headache to the cloud provider to take care of that. So they will give me a high available service all the time. And the last point you want to touch upon is the advantages of cloud computing disaster recovery. You can highlight this point by telling cloud computing offers robust backup and recovery option to protect against any sort of data loss. So in case of any data loss happen, you can use inbuilt services built in or provided by these cloud services to recover these data. Or another point you can highlight is cloud computing enables quick restoration of systems and data in case of disasters such as cyber attacks, natural calamities, or human errors. So if they ask how, you can probably tell that there are multiple regions available. So you can quickly fail over from one region to another region to recover your services, to quickly bring back your services, to make sure your service is up and running. Another point is cloud computing ensures business continuity and safeguards critical information. So make sure you use all of that pointers I talked about. If you want to understand more, you can always click on this reference link. This takes you to a page where you can actually read about it. Like all interview question, I have this documentation available as well. So if you don't want to listen to me while I'm talking about these explanations are clearly written and there are reference link available for each question. So you can download both the presentation pack and this particular document from my blog. Let us look into question number 2. In this question, the interviewer is trying to understand, do you know about the main cloud service models like IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS? Here they kind of given you the answer itself, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Sometimes they ask what are the main types of cloud service model available? Then you need to explain what are these. So let me populate the answer first, then we will go through this one by one. First, IaaS is infrastructure as a service. So how do you explain infrastructure as a service? You can explain infrastructure as a service as a cloud service which provides virtualized computing resources over the internet, such as virtual machine and storage. Within IaaS, users manage operating system and application while the provider manages the infrastructure. So what are the benefits of infrastructure as a service? This offers flexible resources scaling on demand. Another advantage is IaaS reduces any sort of physical hardware and maintenance cost, and this enables disaster recovery and business continuity. So examples of this infrastructure as a service are the services offered by Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services or Google Services, things like that. Next, let's help you understand how you can talk about platform as a service. So platform as a service offers a platform allowing customers to develop, run, and manage applications without dealing with the underlying infrastructure. So in the infrastructure as a service, we talked about you getting virtual machines and storage accounts, things like that to host these services. Then you have to build your applications on top of it. In the infrastructure as a service, you have to manage both the underlying infrastructure like the operating system and the storage and the network and your application. But if you go to the platform as a service, you only need to take care of the applications. So what are the benefits of PaaS? PaaS simplifies the application deployment and development. This provides built-in software components to speed up the development because you don't have to worry about the underlying stuff. Then PaaS manages the underlying infrastructure for you. So if it is Azure, Microsoft manages the underlying infrastructure for the customer. That includes the server, storage, and the networking so that you focuses on your collaboration among your developer teams or the tools what you use. So one of the examples I can think of is Azure App Services or Google App Engine. The third one is software as a service. So how do you explain this? So think of software as a service is like your Netflix or your Salesforce, your Microsoft 365, Exchange Online, things like that. So this is how you can explain. Software as a service delivers software applications over the internet on a subscription basis model, and the provider manages everything, and users access this software via web browsers, or they can access via an application as well, but everything streams from the internet. So what are some of the benefits of software as a service? This eliminates the need for application installation and maintenance. So if you look at it, the first one, you will get the virtual machine and the storage and the network you have to configure. Then you have to install your application. In the second one, Microsoft takes care of the server and the storage. You manages the application layer. In the third one, you don't even have to worry about the infrastructure. You don't have to worry about the application. You only take care of um, the usage and the data part of it. Rest everything is taken by the provider. So this provides access to the software from any device with an internet connection. And software as a service ensures automatic updates and patch management, because the cloud provider will take care of all the backend administration and the management of it. And this offers scalability to accommodate growing user base, because it's technically you purchasing additional licenses, or sometimes it is known as subscriptions, to based on your need. So you don't have to worry about scaling the application per se. Some of the examples what I mentioned is like Spotify, Netflix, Salesforce services, or Microsoft Office 365 services. If you want to know more about it, please feel free to click on this particular link. It takes you through further reading to understand it better. Let's look at question number 3. Here, the interviewer is trying to understand, do you know what are the three different deployment models of cloud? Here again, I kind of gave you the answer. So sometimes they can ask, what are these deployment model? So the primary three deployment models are public, private, and hybrid. So let's populate the answer first. So how do you help them understand about these deployment model? So first, what is this public cloud? So public clouds are services delivered over the public internet and shared across organization. Some of the examples include Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, or Google Services, or it is known as Google Cloud Platform or GCP. What are the advantages of public cloud? Some of the advantages are cost efficient due to shared resources, high scalability and flexibility. This is what we learned in the first question. No need for any sort of on-premises resources, accessibility from anywhere with an internet connection. Some of the disadvantages of public cloud include less control over the security and compliance, because you are putting security and compliance things on top of whatever they provide. You don't have the underlying control on the hardware and the place where it is hosted, things like that. So that is a slightly disadvantage there. Potential latency issues depending on the internet connection. So if you are in a remote location where there is no close region available for you, you potentially could face latency issues if your internet connection is bad as well. So that is a slight disadvantage. Another disadvantage you can think of is, because it's a shared resources model, this may lead to any sort of performance variations as well, depending on what type of deployment option you choose, things like that. The next is private cloud. So what is a private cloud? Private clouds are exclusive cloud environment dedicated to a single organization. So you can think of it as something you hosted on premises within your organization, or you could probably take a help from a third party provider who exclusively manages all the things for you. So what are these advantages for this private cloud? So advantages include greater control over security and compliance. This provides you a lot of customization to meet any sort of specific organizational need, because you manages everything, it's under your control. And this offers you enhanced performance due to the dedicated resources. All the resources what you put over there are exclusively for you, so you can decide how you want to use it without worrying about the cost implication, things like that, because you paid for that resources upfront. That doesn't mean it doesn't come with some disadvantages. So what are the disadvantages of this private cloud? Some of the disadvantages are higher cost compared to the public cloud, because you have to pay for these services upfront to purchase it. And even if you use it or not, you already invested that much money. So there is a cost involved. And typically that is higher cost because you're not buying in volume. Then this requires management and maintenance, because you are hosting it. You have to worry about where you are hosting it, paying for the place, paying for the electricity, paying for the internet, paying for the air condition, all sort of things. And then you need manpower to manage and maintain and things like that. Other disadvantage is limited scalability compared to public cloud. What if your business is going through a huge expansion and you can't get hold of the hardware to actually support the expansion? If you're in public cloud, you don't have to worry about the scalability, because the provider will provide you unlimited options where you can pick and choose to scale your services. That's not your worry on buying these hardware and things like that. The next one is hybrid cloud. How do you explain hybrid cloud? So you can probably combine the two things what you learned so far, public cloud and private cloud, and you can stitch an answer together. So you can tell that this combines the benefits of both public and private clouds, allowing data and application to be shared between them. So you can decide what application you want to host in the public, some of the resources you want to keep in the on premises or closest to where you are, which is controlled by you. So some of the advantages are flexibility to choose where you run these workloads depending on sovereignty issues, depending on compliance, depending on your preference, depending on confidentiality level, things like that. It could be anything. So you can decide where you want to host it. Second advantage is optimization of existing infrastructure, security, and compliance. So you optimize your existing infrastructure and then you look at the cloud for further expansion. Another benefit is scalability aspect of public cloud with the control of private cloud. Some of the disadvantages include complexity in management and integration depending upon what services you use. Sometimes you need high skill to make sure that everything is properly managed and properly integrated, and it's a constant task. Another disadvantage could be potential for inconsistent security policies, because you might have a different policy architecture and the services on-prem versus some of the services running in the cloud. Another one could be a higher cost due to managing both environments. So you probably need to have two different skill set if your team is not equipped to handle both of these services at the same time. So think of all of that when you answer this question. Try to go and read a bit more about it if you're quite new to this particular area. Otherwise, this explanation is more than sufficient for you to clear this particular question. Let's look at question number 4. This is a scenario based question. So here the interviewer is asking, hey, your company wants to move their on-premises application to cloud, but is concerned about security and compliance. They want to definitely move to the cloud, but they want to make sure that security and compliance is taken care. Which deployment model would you recommend and why? Based on what you have learned in the previous question, that holds the answer for this question. So they definitely want to move into the cloud. They have concerns about security and compliance. How do you help them ease their transition to the cloud rather than like giving them a band-aid approach? So let me populate the answer. The correct answer is hybrid cloud. So typically talk about all the things what I mentioned in the last question. So if you want a refresher, I can give you a refresher by giving you an explanation on explain hybrid cloud as like something which offers extra security and compliance, because this allows sensitive data and critical application to be maintained on a private cloud that is there on premises, which ensures compliance with industry like regulations and internal security policies. This enables better control and monitoring of better data access and storage within your organization. These are some of the advantages. And then it provides some cost efficiency as well, because this optimizes resource utilization by leveraging the public cloud for less sensitive operation, and you can maintain your highly confidential stuff on premises. So some of the stuff you can offload to the cloud, some of the confidential stuff you can retain in your on premises. Another way they can reduce the cost is by no needing to invest in and maintaining extensive on-premises infrastructure. Though they don't need to keep on expanding their on-premises. Whenever there is an expansion, if it is less sensitive, they can move that to the cloud. So maintain on-premises infrastructure only for the confidential stuff. And highlight the fact about the scalability and flexibility this hybrid cloud offers by telling, hey, this provides ability to scale resources up and down based on your demand. You don't have to necessarily keep all the services running in the cloud all the time. If you don't want, you can scale down as well, so you don't pay for that extra services which is running in the cloud. And this particular model provides flexibility and control over sensitive data while optimizing resources. So this is a fairly straightforward question and straightforward answer. If you need further reading, please go and check on this particular reference link for further reading. Let us look at question number 5. In this question, the interviewer is trying to understand, do you know about the shared responsibility model? This is quite important concept within the cloud computing. So how do you explain this shared servicing model or shared responsibility model? So let me populate the answer. First, to give you a quick answer, see if you can understand anything from this. The shared responsibility model outlines the division of security and compliance responsibility between the cloud provider and the customer. So customer takes some responsibility, the cloud provider takes some responsibility. That is shared service model. So on a high level, what are the responsibility owned by the cloud provider? Typically, the cloud provider will take care of the responsibility of the infrastructure security. So they ensure the safety and integrity of the hardware, software, networking, and the facilities. You don't have to worry about it. And the physical security, which protect the data center, that is also taken care by the cloud provider. Additionally, they take care of the network security by implementing the firewall, encryption, and things like that to safeguard the network. And these cloud providers go and proactively take these regulatory compliance requirement by the industry standards that provide a secure environment. So these are all the things taken care by the cloud provider. The next thing we need to understand is what are the customer responsibility. So usually the customer is the one who need to take care of the data security. Data means your own data. So you need to take care of the confidentiality, integrity, availability of the data stored in the cloud. So you need to make sure that you have the right mechanism in place or the services or the tools which you can use to protect the data. Then the application security. Even though the cloud provider provide you the server and everything to host the application, you need to ensure that all the application and software running in the cloud environment are secure. So how do you do that? You make sure you put the right guardrails, you patch your application on time, you only expose the application to the right ports and things like that. Another responsibility of the customer is identity management. You are the one who need to manage the user access and the permission to prevent any sort of unauthorized access. So how do you do that? Only give the rightful rights to a user. Don't make a lot of administrators in your organization. Make sure you provide the protocols to give the right user the right access to do the right task and things like that. It's a security conversation. We can dive deep into that at a later point, but make sure you take care of the identity. So customer responsibility is to look after the identity. And then the responsibility for the customer is the configuration management. So that is, you need to make sure you properly configure and manages the cloud resources. The cloud provider will not configure anything for you. They just provide you the platform and the customer takes care of the configuration part of it. And the last one is the compliance part of it. So as a customer, you need to ensure that the cloud services comply with your internal policies and external regulations. If it is doesn't, you need to probably choose a different cloud provider or you need to choose a different cloud deployment model like we talked about in the previous question, like a hybrid model which offers you greater flexibility in terms of compliance management and things like that. So these sort of responsibility varies slightly on what type of cloud service model you choose as well. So if you choose IaaS, there will be a slightly different variation of this shared responsibility. If you choose PaaS, there is a slight different variation. If it is SaaS, there is a slightly different variation. So I have explained this in detail on another interview video I've done for the Microsoft 365, where I have explained in detail. Because here in Azure, I understand that even if you're a beginner, you understand this concept. Where in the Microsoft 365 world, anybody who's trying to learn this may be like quite a newbie. So I've explained this in detail. So if you want to watch that, you can go to that video and watch that explanation. Let us look into question number 6. Here the interviewer is trying to understand, do you know the not a characteristics of cloud computing? Typically, I don't think anybody asks a question like this. This is not an examination. Typically, these questions will come on an examination style, but I just want to give you some variety. That's why I asked you this question. But again, if you go through a question like this, you are trying to eliminate here. While eliminating, you will learn good 3 answers as well. That is the objective of this. So, what is not a characteristic of cloud computing? Is it on demand self service? That is a benefit, or that is a characteristic of cloud computing, because users can automatically provision cloud computing resources as needed without any sort of human intervention from the service provider. And this feature include the ability to manage server time, network storage, and application. So it's an on-demand self-service. That is a characteristic of cloud service. Next, is it broad network access? Yes. Resources are available over a network and access through standard mechanism to promote use of heterogeneous thin or thick client platforms like mobile phones or tablets or phone or workstation, whichever devices you use. As long as you have an internet connectivity, you can access any services offered by the cloud. So that is a characteristic. Next is it offers that services are available over the internet, enhancing accessibility and user reach. So what is the next option? Is it a rapid elasticity? Is it a characteristic of cloud computing? Yes, because you can expand these services by provisioning whatever you need and scale rapidly outward, or you can shrink by going inward if there is no demand for your services. And for customers, this means that they can quickly increase capacity to accommodate growth or scale down when the resources are no longer needed. What about the fixed performance? No. So that is the wrong answer. So even though it is a correct answer for this question, fixed performance is not a characteristic of cloud computing, because cloud resources are designed to be flexible and scalable. Fixed performance implies that the resources cannot adapt to varying loads, which is contrary to the fundamental principles of cloud computing. So that is the wrong answer for this question. So we completed the first section of this interview. So that was the basics. Now going forward, we are going to increase the complexity bit by bit. So if you are a beginner, intermediate, or experienced level, I will give you enough reference link and good explanation so that you can understand it. But for whatever reason, if you can't understand the way I talk or because of my accent, please download the pack to read that answer clearly so that you can understand more. Next section, we are going to go through 8 questions on Azure Virtual Machines or VMs. First question is, what is Azure Virtual Machine and when would you use it? So it's a twofold question. One, it is trying to understand, do you know anything about Azure Virtual Machine? And second, it is going to try to understand, do you know what are the use cases for using it? So let's populate the answer. First, help them understand what is Azure Virtual Machine. You can tell this by telling Azure Virtual Machine or VM is an on-demand scalable computing resource in the Microsoft Azure, and this allows customers to run their application, host services, or perform computing tasks without managing the physical hardware. So that is the explanation of Azure Virtual Machine. Now, what are the use cases? So we talked about some of the use cases in the previous question. So let me help you understand some of the use cases. One, it allows customers running their application that require custom configuration. So if you want to install a particular software with custom configuration, you don't want to use a platform as a service, you would choose a virtual machine where you have full control on how to install it, how to configure it. It's up to you. And you can choose a specific operating system or runtime when you install this application. You can choose what server operating system, what client operating system, what runtime you want to run, things like that. Second use case is this allows you to host databases, websites, and business application. So you can go ahead and install your SQL or NoSQL or other database servers, whatever you choose. Or if you want to run web servers such as Apache or IaaS, you can go ahead and pick that too. Or if you want to run your own enterprise solutions like ERP or CRM systems, this allows you to run that as well. Another use case you can probably highlight here is this allows you to test and develop application in different environment. So you can have isolated environment for development and testing. This will help you simulate the production environment, ensuring compatibility across various operating system and software versions. Another thing which you could probably highlight is, imagine if your company is purely moving towards the platform as a service, which is the less maintenance option. But if you happen to have some legacy application that require custom operating system, while you are modernizing that application, you can tell that, hey, we are going to use this legacy application in the virtual machine on a specific operating system while we are going through the migration strategy and things like that. So that's how you can stick together a story to explain with these use cases. Let's look at the next question. The next question, the interviewer trying to understand, how do you create this Azure virtual machine? Typically, they will not ask you to create unless this is a lab include. So some interviews will have lab mostly for development roles. But if you are going for a infrastructure role also, sometimes these companies have these lab environment where they ask you to do certain tasks. So I'm going to quickly take you through the Azure portal to show you some of the mechanisms or ways you can create this Azure virtual machine. All right, so I'm giving you some of the steps on what you can perform. I'm sure you know much better than me, but if you are a beginner, you want to know how to create an Azure virtual machine, there are multiple ways you can do that. You can use a template, you can use a script, you can use PowerShell. This is a graphical user interface, very simple to understand. So this is the Azure portal. You can go to portal.azure.com to log into the Azure portal. Once you log in with the right username and password, then you can access the services. On the left hand side, you can open this flyout and you can see many of the popular services, including Azure Virtual Machine. So you can click this, or you can go in here, the search box, and you can type in any Azure services, including virtual machine. So that will give you these services option which you can pick from as well. So when you open the virtual machine tab, if you currently have any virtual machine, this is where you can see it. If you don't, you have an option to create virtual machine. Ignore the other option, just focus on the Azure virtual machine. So click on Azure virtual machine, and that gives you this graphical user interface to pick and choose and provide certain information to set up your first Azure virtual. First, make sure you select the right subscription. Then the resource group, where do you want to host it? So resource group is nothing but a container where you are collecting all of these services or putting together these services together. So you can create a new one or you can select an existing one. So for interest of this demo, I'm selecting an existing one and give a name for your virtual machine. So I'm going to call it as interview 123 Azure. That's going to be the name. Where do you want to host it? This is what I talked about, different places where you can host it. Microsoft have plenty of these regions which allows you to pick and choose where you want to host it. These choices would be depending upon, do you want to go closer to the user where they are residing, or is that where your end users are? Do you want to provide these services in a less latency way, things like that. So that determines where you host it. So pick a region which is closest to you or most appropriate for you. And then these are the availability zone. We will cover this in detail, but this is basically what takes care of the redundancy aspect of it. If something happens to your data, depending on the availability options you choose, you can recover these data quickly and faster, and your data is in a high resilience manner, hosted in a high resilience manner. So there are many options. I don't want to digress and go into that detail. So pick up one and then the zone based on what you picked. Then Microsoft offers plenty of security type. Do you want to go with a standard one or a trusted launch virtual machine, which gives you additional protection, things like that? What operating system you want to choose? You can see that there are plenty of operating system choices like Linux offerings, various distribution within Linux, Microsoft offering, and you can bring in your own custom image as well. So I'm going to pick a Windows server. Within that, you have different architecture available based on the operating system you choose. You get to choose that. These are some of the additional spot discounts based on the capacity or the price for capacity, things like that. We are not going to talk about that. The most important part is the size of the virtual machine. The size is nothing but this compute. We will learn more into this particular sizes and various sizes in upcoming question. These sizes are nothing but a combination of virtual CPU and the RAM and the disk you can get for different purpose built devices. So if I shrink this, and if you look at it, D series, this is designed to protect any sort of confidentiality, integrity of the code, a general purpose workload. DV6 is the sixth generation D family for general purpose one. There is high memory need compute, F series for compute intensive workload and things like that. So there are quite a different number of series you can get. So basically which one you pick is based on why you are trying to host this particular service. So when you choose, it has different cost associated with it. On the right hand side, you can see that estimated cost for this particular server running 24/7, including the image, it's gonna cost me like this much dollars. And additionally, I'm gonna pay for disk networking management, things like that, as and when I populate these services. Next, who is gonna provide a password for the administrator? Then you can choose the inbound role. Do you want to connect it using any port? If not, none. So that secures it. So then you have assume that you have other mechanism to connect it. Otherwise, for configuration, you can select what are the ports you need to open to connect to that services. You need to be aware of the security implications of whatever you choose here and the licenses. So if you are a hybrid user benefit user, that means you already have these software assurances which you use for your on premises. You can bring in that licensing here to reduce the cost of these services. So if I select this, that immediately brings the cost down of the server. So you can see that previously we were supposed to pay around like 130 or something like that. Now we are looking at paying 89. So if I uncheck this, the cost of this goes back to 156. You can immediately click on review and create, but I just want to show you additional configuration like disk. Herein you will get an option to choose what type of disk you want for your virtual machine. Do you want a standard disk or SSD, premium storage? Even within the premium, there are multiple options available right now. Pick a choice. Go to networking tab. You can choose an existing network where you can host this particular virtual machine so that it can interact with the services which is part of that network or wherever it is having access to connect and things like that. Or else you can create a brand new network. Network security group, we will talk about this in detail when we go through the networking scenario. This allows you to define the security controls, the flows, things which is coming in and out of these services, things like that. Next is the management aspect of it. Do you want to connect into Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which provides advanced threat protection, things like that? Do you want to enable system assigned managed identity, or do you want to log in with your Entra ID? There are a lot of options here. Some cost benefit options like do you want to provide automatic shutdown based on that the server will shut down on a particular time. Do you want to enable backup so something goes wrong with the device, you can automatically retrieve it based on the previous restore time? So you can see that the option is unlimited and it's keep on evolving. There is monitoring tab where you can actually look into the boot diagnostics, log information to find out and troubleshoot any health related issues for this particular server. Advanced tab will provide you connection into extensions, custom instructions to install when boot into the device, things like that. I know that I talked a lot, so I don't want to spend a lot of time. Once you provide all these right information, all you have to do is click on review and create. Based on the information what you provided, it goes through a verification validation. If all the information is correct, after the final validation, if you get the green tick box, you can click on create. That virtual machine is going to be ready for you in like a minute or so. That how easy and simple it is to go to Azure portal and create it. If you don't want to go through all of this, you can create an ARM template, or like you say another mechanism like Terraform or whatever, or a PowerShell to create it as well. So there are various ways you can create it. So these are the high level steps which I mentioned in this pack. So if you don't want to go through this in explanation, you can just basically want to read about it. These are the steps you can use to actually go ahead and create these servers. In this particular question, interviewer is trying to understand, do you know the main difference between Azure virtual machine and how to choose the right one? So I kind of showed different virtual machine sizes. Let us go through these on a super high level. So these are some of the most common virtual machine sizes you can find within Azure. There are some different ones as well, but these are the most common one. Let me help you understand what are these. First is the general purpose. This comes as either a D series or a B series. So these are balanced CPU to memory ratio. This is good for most applications. D series are ideal for web servers, medium traffic application databases, and the B series are good for cost effective workloads that are typically low in moderate CPU usage but occasionally require high performance. That's where you can look into the B series. The next offering is the compute optimized one. It is known as F series. As the name suggests, the F series offer you high CPU performance for compute heavy tasks. So this is best for any sort of batch processing, web servers. If you're doing any sort of analytics and gaming, F series is the ideal choice. The third option is the memory optimized one. This is either come as E series or M series. As the name suggests, this offers you high memory for large databases and in-memory analytics. E series is ideal for relational databases, memory caching, and in-memory analytics. And M series is suitable for large-scale databases and ERP applications. The next is storage optimized L series. As the name suggests, this series is geared towards providing you high disk throughput for large data processing. This is designed for databases, big data, and data warehousing. And the last most common series of VMs available in Azure is the GPU enabled NC or NV series. So this is designed for any sort of AI, gaming, and graphic intensive workloads. NC means this is optimized for AI, machine learning, and high performance computing, or HPC. NV series is suitable for virtualization, rendering, and gaming workloads. So choosing the right virtual machine, you need to consider how much CPU you need, how much RAM you need, how much disk performance, and most importantly, you need to consider the pricing as well. So if you want to know more about it, please click on this reference link, which will take you through the page where it talks about the different types of Azure VM series in detail. Let us look into question number 10. This is a scenario based question. So the question is, your company want to run a high traffic e-commerce website with unpredictable traffic spikes. What VM feature should you use to ensure scalability and availability? So a couple of key points here. You want to run your high traffic, so your e-commerce website is regularly used for many people from many places, that is high traffic with some unpredictable traffic spikes, and you need to pick and choose what VM feature you can use within Azure to ensure the scalability aspect and availability of your services. So this is where you can help the interviewer understand. You can tell like, hey, to handle high traffic and ensure high availability, you can use features like auto scaling, load balancer, availability set, and Azure scale set. So on a super high level, we will go through in detail about this later. On a high level, what is auto scaling? Auto scaling allows you to automatically adjust the VM instances based on demand. So while configuring your services, you can choose like how many number of VMs you need to be in the pack. So depending on the load, the instances of the VM will automatically spin up to meet the demand. And when the demand goes down, you can have conditions in place where it can shrink down or reduce the number of VMs running, thus saving the cost as well. So that is auto scaling. The next option you can provide is load balancer. If you place a load balancer that intelligently distribute this traffic across multiple virtual machines to avoid any sort of overload. So load balancers come in many shape and form with different features, things like that. We need to understand that in the networking section, but having a load balancer is ideal and crucial to distribute this traffic evenly so that it is not burning a single server. When it does, it will lead you to bad performance or poor performance for the user. Third option is availability sets. So availability sets ensures any sort of redundancy by spreading these VMs across multiple fault and update domains. If you remember in the first few questions, I talked about cloud offers these reliability and redundancy services. So if something goes wrong in the cloud, like if any electrical failure or internet outages, because you have this availability set, this will automatically reroute your services to a different availability zone based on the fault. It could be based on a patching issue, it could be based on electrical failure, it could be based on a network failure. But if you have your services spread across different availability set, you don't have to worry about these failures because it will automatically take care of the redundancy aspect of your services. And the last point is Azure Scale Set. This automatically manages and scales a group of VMs as traffic fluctuates. This goes hand in hand with the auto scaling aspect of it. So you will configure the auto scaling in the Azure Scale Set. So based on the demand, it will group together some of the VM, and based on the high traffic, it will increase the number of VMs which offer the services. And if the demand goes down, it shrinks down the number of VMs it provides services. So make sure you look into this aspect, look into this Azure virtual machine scale set. This is directly answering the question here. You can probably tell, hey, you can use Azure virtual machine scale set that include all of these below set components and things like that. Let us look into the question number 11. How does the networking work for an Azure virtual machine? So here, primarily they are looking to understand, do you have a networking skill to manage Azure virtual machine? So maybe the interviewer is trying to understand, do you understand the components behind the Azure virtual machine, which makes the networking possible, things like that. So let me populate the short answer first, then I'll give you the explanation. The short answer is each Azure virtual machine is connected to a virtual network, or we call it as VNet, and can communicate securely with other resources. What you see on the screen right now are some of the components part of this virtual network. So let's go through these each components one by one. First, what is this virtual network or VNet? So if you remember, when we created this virtual machine, I think the third or the fourth tab after the disk was selecting the virtual network. We didn't spend enough time there, but I just showed you on a super high level what it is. So at any point in time, if you feel like these questions are not showing enough practical things, this is not designed as a practical session, then I can never finish it. You can always refer to my hands-on videos or the certification courses, which has a lot of practical details. So here, this is a theory part which explain how you can answer these questions in a theoretical way to the interviewer. So what is virtual network? Virtual network is the something which you create to isolate the network environment for your virtual machines. So if you are trying to host your application, you want to segment these into different networks. Virtual networks allows you to isolate this network by creating different environment. And this enables communication between the virtual machine and other Azure resources within the VNet. So if you put a virtual machine in a virtual network, any other resources residing in that virtual network will be able to communicate to each other. But at the same time, if the resources are staying in a different virtual network, unless and until you create a different flow path or the communication happen between these network, the resources will not be able to communicate to each other. So that is something you need to keep in mind. Second, it enables and supports creating subnets. Subnets are a mini virtual network you can create within a primary virtual network, which will allow for further network segmentation. So if you want to have a primary segment of virtual network and then you want to have categorized into tiny subnets for different groupings within your organization, then you can select the subnet part of the virtual network. Now let's look into the second component, that is public IP address. Public IP address allows internet access to the virtual machine if you assign it. So without assigning a public IP address, you can't get the internet address. So you need to go and assign it, or you need to look at other mechanisms on how you can provide internet access. Are you allowing it? Are you blocking it to your virtual machine? And these public IP addresses can be a static or a dynamic one. This provides you flexibility in terms of network configuration. And another key component of public IP address is this is important for hosting web services or applications accessible over internet. So if you are creating an application and your users need to be connected over the internet, then you need to make sure that you have public IP assigned, which you can take either static or manual. The third component is Network Security Group or NSG. I kind of showed you this as well while creating the virtual machine. So what is this NSG or Network Security Group? This acts as a virtual firewall for your virtual machine. There are various firewall services you can adopt within Azure, including Azure Firewall itself. But if you don't want to do it, but if you want to take help of a virtual firewall for your virtual machine, like a mini firewall, then you look into the Azure Network Security Group or NSG. This helps you control the inbound and outbound traffic to and from your virtual machine. And this uses security rules to allow or deny traffic based on certain factors. These factors could include source and destination IP addresses, protocol, is it a TCP or UDP port, or do you want to block or allow these traffic based on a port number? And then there is a direction. You choose, do you want to flow the traffic direction inbound or outbound? It's a good topic to look into. If you are quite not familiar with it, just read about Network Security Group. The next component I want to talk about is Azure Load Balancer. This Azure Load Balancer distributes the incoming network traffic across multiple virtual machines. This ensures high availability and reliability for balancing the load of your application. This supports public and internal load balancing. So not only you can have the load balancer looking into traffic coming from external thing that is public, like to your website, or if you have an application which is hosted for your internal services, you can have an internal load balancer looking into internal traffic as well. And this Azure Load Balancer has features such as Health Probe to monitor the status of the virtual machine and automatic failover to a healthy virtual machine. If there is something wrong with a particular virtual machine, it can do that failover smoothly for you. So these are on a high level what the networking work for you can think of for an Azure virtual machine. Next question is question number 12. What are the different storage options available for Azure Virtual Machine? So when we created this Azure Virtual Machine, I kind of showed you the second part where after selecting the name and things like that, you had a place where you can choose the disk or the disk type of the storage options available. What are the options available? Let me populate the short answer first. Azure Virtual Machine uses primarily managed disk for storage, and these managed disk come in different shape and form. So I will help you understand what are these in detail. And then there are additional storage options with Azure Blob storage and file storage. These storage are not directly attached to the server directly. So you can have these services attached as a side service to the Azure virtual machine. To help you understand a bit better, let me take you through this one by one. So first, let's look into what is a premium SSDs. Premium SSDs provide you high performance and low latency storage. This is primarily good for mission critical workloads. These premium SSDs are really good to get consistent IOPS and throughputs, and this can support large databases and high transactional workloads. So if you are looking for high performance, low latency, high throughput, then look at leveraging premium SSDs within your Azure storage. Let's look into the second option, standard SSDs. Standard SSDs are really good for balancing your cost and performance. This is suitable for any sort of general purpose workloads, gives you better performance than your normal hard disk, but at a lower cost than a premium SSD. So where is it ideal? This is ideal for web servers and lightly used enterprise applications is where I would recommend using this. Third option is the standard offering called standard hard disk. This is a low cost storage option, mostly suitable for less performance sensitive application, best for backup and archive solution, and this provides sequential data access. So this is the cheapest option. So if you are looking for high performance, look at either standard and premium SSDs. Then I kind of mentioned two additional storage. We will go in detail about these in the upcoming slides especially when we go through the storage part. But here I just want to mention a couple of things. First, what is this Azure Blob storage? Blob storage are primarily used for storing large amount of unstructured data, and this supports data lakes and big data analytics, things like that. Azure Blob Storage provides scalable, durable, and secure storage, and this offers different access tiers to optimize cost and performance. And what is Azure Files? Azure Files are managed files in the cloud, and this is accessible via SMB or NFS protocol. This is primarily good for like any SMB solution where you would have seen or heard about map drives within your organization. So this is something which you can use to replace that. And this is integrated with your Azure backup for data protection. And this supports scenarios like file server migration and dev test environments. Let's look at question number 13. How do you secure an Azure virtual machine? So primarily looking at security part of Azure virtual machine. Let me populate the short answer first. There are a lot of ways you can secure that. Depending on which one you pick, you can give a good explanation on that. So these are on a high level. You can either use Azure Bastion, just-in-time access, network security group, Defender, patches and update. So I'll help you understand what are the talking points you can use depending on what path you choose. You don't have to necessarily talk about all these points. You can probably pick one or two and explain that. First, look into what is Azure Bastion. Azure Bastion provides secure and seamless RDP SSH connectivity to your virtual machine directly in the Azure portal. So you don't have to have a separate tool installed to take a remote session of your Azure devices. You can use Azure Bastion to do it itself. Second, it eliminates the need for exposing a public IP address to your virtual machine. Otherwise, you need to have a public IP address or a DNS referring to connect into the virtual machine. Third, it acts as a jump box. Jump box is a term we use as a mechanism to connect into another services with a hardened and fully managed service. So look into Azure Bastion if you have not heard of it. The next way you can secure your virtual machine is using just-in-time or JIT VM access. So if you enable this just-in-time VM access, this restricts RDP SSH access to your virtual machine to only the time you need it, thus reducing any sort of exposure to attacks and things like that. And this allows you as an administrator to specify who can access your virtual machine and how long they can access it. You can define those parameters. And finally, this reduces any sort of attack that could happen by closing the RDP and SSH port when not in use. The next is network security group. We talked about in detail on this couple of questions ago. Network security group allows you to control incoming and outgoing traffic to and from your virtual machine network interfaces, and this allows you to create security rule based on source and destination IP address or port or protocol, things like that. And this enables you to enforce and control network traffic at a sub level or like a subnet level as well. Next is Azure Defender. So if you enable Azure Defender, this provides advanced threat protection across your Azure and your on-premises workloads. Azure Defender can be used to detect and mitigate threats with behavioral analytics and machine learning. And this offers real-time alerts and detailed incident reports. And the last one is a tip. This is not a solution. This is basically everybody should be doing this, irrelevant of you have solution or not. It's called regularly applying patches and updates. Ensure your virtual machines are protected against the latest vulnerabilities and threats. You can actually automate the process of applying patches and update using Azure Update Management, so it automatically does it. When you do that, make sure you schedule maintenance window to minimize any sort of downtime and disruptions caused by not having access to that server and things like that. Let's look at question number 14. Here we are going through a detection method to find an answer. Which of the following features help ensure high availability for an Azure virtual machine? So we are going to look into high availability for Azure virtual machine out of these four options. Azure availability set, yes, that is the correct answer. The first one, Azure availability set. Let's populate our answer. Yep. So Azure availability set is the correct answer. So what is Azure availability set? Azure availability sets distribute your virtual machine across multiple fault and update domain, ensuring redundancy using hardware failures and maintenance. So I use a couple of terms like fault domain and update domain. So what is a fault domain? Fault domain are when VMs are placed in a different fault domain, protecting them from simultaneous hardware failures. And update domain isolation is when the VMs are placed in different update domain, ensuring that not all virtual machines are updated simultaneously, thus by reducing downtime during maintenance. And whenever we use this Azure availability set, Microsoft guarantees us 99.95 SLA for virtual machine uptime. So this can be used to enhance your application reliance, a cost efficiency mechanism because it minimizes the risk of downtime, and it provides a lot of comprehensive monitoring as well. So that is the correct answer. The other options were Azure Virtual Network, that is a virtual network service, not a high availability service. Azure Resource Group is a grouping which we can put together for all the resources. Azure Active Directory or Entra ID is for identity service. The correct answer is Azure Availability Set. So that concludes the Azure Virtual Machine part. In this particular section, we are going to go through Azure App Service. This is a platform as a service offering. Here we are going to go through web apps, API apps, things like that. And we have 8 questions to go over different scenarios. Let's look at question number 15. What is first Azure App Service and what are its key benefits? So let's populate the short answer first. So I'm going to just read this out. Azure App Service is a fully managed platform for hosting web application, RESTful APIs, and mobile backends. Azure App Service supports multiple languages including .NET, Java, Python, PHP, and Node.js. This is good. So what are its key benefits? The key benefits of Azure App Service are it is fully managed. So if you remember in the first or second question, I talked about shared service models and different cloud models. We talked about IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Azure App Service comes under platform as a service offering. So that means Microsoft provide you a fully managed service. So you don't need to manage the underlying infrastructure, scaling, or updates. Microsoft does that for you automatically. Then other key benefit of Azure App Service is its built-in security. So this supports authentication, encryption, compliance baked in. So you just need to configure that to leverage it. The third key benefit is Azure App Service offer you scalability options. So it can automatically scales application based on traffic demand, ensuring optimal performance during your peak time and cost efficiency during low traffic periods. I can go on and on. Few other examples which I can think of is benefit is integration. Azure App Service integrate with wide variety of DevOps tools, databases and APIs. High availability is another option because this ensures that the built-in load balancing and automatic failover capabilities reduces any sort of downtime, and this improves the user experience. So just look into these key benefits. Just first and foremost understand what is app service and how it differentiates from the infrastructure as a service. Once you understand that, then you can easily answer this particular question. Some of the examples of use cases are you can use Azure App Service for web application or API hosting or mobile backend. So web application is a web application which you can probably host it like an e-commerce website or things like that. API hosting is you can manage the RESTful API that can be consumed by various clients, including web, mobile, and IoT applications. Or third is the mobile backends. This develops a robust backend for mobile application, ensuring reliable data storage and processing. Let's look into question number 16. How do Azure Web Apps and Azure API Apps differ? So it's a comparison. The interviewer is trying to understand, do you understand what is web apps and API apps? And then additionally, do you know what are the comparison or main differences between these two? So let's populate the short answer first. Both web apps and API apps are part of Azure App Service, but they serve different purposes. Let's look into these purposes first. Web apps are primarily used to host website and web application. API apps are used to host RESTful APIs and microservices. What are the supported frameworks for web apps? It supports .NET, Java, PHP, Python, Node.js. For API, it's .NET, Java, Python, Node.js, not PHP. What are the integration options available? Works with the Azure SQL, Blob storage, and content delivery network. And API apps work with Logic Apps, Power Automate, and API Gateway. Let me give you a few more talking points for the web app. So let's understand web apps a bit more. What are the features or the benefit of web apps? It provides you scalability to meet your user demand. It provides built-in security like SSL and TLS. It integrates with GitHub, Azure DevOps, and other CI/CD platforms, and this supports for custom domain names and SSL certificates. Some of the examples of Azure Web Apps are your corporate website or e-commerce platforms, or you have a blogging platform where you want to host in Azure, you can do that. Now, let's look into some of the benefit and features of API apps and some example. API apps allows you to give you an option for API management, which is a full lifecycle API management, including versioning and monitoring. You have seamless integration with Logic Apps and Power Automate and other Azure services. These APIs can support various authentication methods like OAuth or JWT and AD, etc. Some of the examples of Azure API apps include host multiple microservices architecture with independent scalable APIs. You can develop robust backend to support your mobile application, or you can create and manage APIs for your IoT applications as well. Let's look into question number 17. What is Azure App Service and what are its key benefits? Here we are trying to understand Azure App Service key benefits. We kind of touched upon what is Azure App Service. We have to go in detail about some of the benefits so that you are understood about these benefits. Let's populate the answer. So Azure App Service primarily offer these two types of scaling. So you need to understand these scaling. One is vertical scaling, another one is horizontal scaling. So what is this vertical scaling? Vertical scaling involves increasing or decreasing the size of the app service plan For example, you can move from basic plan to a premium plan to gain more resources such as memory, CPU, storage. This is ideal for applications that need more power to handle increased workload. Second option is horizontal scaling or auto scale. This allows you to automatically add or remove instances based on a predefined metric such as CPU, memory, or traffic thresholds. This ensures that your application can handle varying loads efficiently without any sort of manual intervention. Overall, the main auto scaling benefit are for giving you high availability and cost efficiency for your Azure App Service. Let's look at question number 18. This is a scenario based question. Most of your interview questions are going to be something like this. So this question asks like, hey, your company is launching an API that will have unpredictable traffic spikes. How do you configure your Azure App Service for scalability? Here the interviewer is trying to understand, do you know how to configure it? Do you know what are the features of Azure App Services which you can use, which will allow scalability and which will take care of any sort of traffic spike? So this is a really good question. So let me populate the short answer first, then I'll give you the explanation. First, to handle this, Azure App Service offer you auto scaling. You can deploy the service to multiple regions, or you can enable caching. At the same time, you can always look into the performance monitor to look at the unpredictable traffic spikes, things like that. So let me give you a bit more explanation so that you understand it all clearly. Let's go through this one by one. First, how do you explain, or first of all, how do you understand this auto scaling? So auto scaling can be used to automatically increase or decrease the number of instances based on a particular metric, and these metrics can be a CPU or a memory usage. So when you configure this, this ensures that your application can handle varying traffic loads effectively. So if I can give you an example, you can configure auto scaling rules to add instances when CPU usage exceed 70% and remove instances when it drops below 30%. That's how the auto scaling works. The next example is, or the next feature which you should be talking about is ability to deploy these app service in multiple regions. So you can use Azure Traffic Manager that can be used to distribute the request across multiple regions. So this is not only reduces the latency but also provides redundancy in case of regional failures. An example you can supplement is you can deploy application in both East US and in Singapore to serve customers in both sides of the world. Another feature which you can highlight is enabling caching. So what is this caching? Azure provides you with a service called Azure Redis Cache. I don't know whether I'm even pronouncing it right. It spells like REDIS, Redis. So you can use that to store frequently accessed data in memory. That will reduce the load of your database and improving performance. So example of how you can use that is you can cache the result of a frequent database query to spread up the response time for repeated requests. Another feature you can highlight is the performance monitoring. You can utilize Azure Monitor to gain real-time insight into your application performances. Azure Monitor allows you to set up alerts to notify you of any sort of potential issues because they impact users. So how can you use it? You can create alert for high response time or failed request so that notifies you so you can quickly identify and address these problems. So that's how you will address this. And there is a part where it asks about Azure App Service for scalability. You can mention things like some of the benefits of Azure App Service include high availability because it automatically adjusts the number of instances to maintain the application availability. Then it offers cost efficiency because it allows you to optimize cost by scaling down the instances during the low traffic periods. Let's look at question number 19. What are deployment slots in Azure App Service? So let me populate the short answer. First, the deployment slots allow you to deploy multiple versions of an application within the same app service. This particular feature is invaluable for developers and DevOps teams as it enables staging, testing, and production workflows within a single instance. What you are looking at below are some of the key benefits of deployment slots. First is blue-green deployments. So with these blue-green deployments, you can test new updates in a staging slot before swapping to production. This ensures that any new changes are verified before going live. This process significantly reduces the risk of introducing bugs into your production environment. Another key benefit is zero downtime deployments. This helps you swap slots with no downtime, and users continue to access the application without any interruption, providing a seamless experience during the updates. And another feature or the benefit is rollback support. So if an update causes any particular issue, you can swap back instantly to the previous version. So this capability ensures that any problematic deployments can be quickly undone, thus minimizing the impact on users. Other benefits you can highlight is the configuration isolation, traffic redirection, things like that. Some of the example of deployment slot usage are you can use it for feature testing or load testing or hotfix deployment, things like that. Let's go to the next question. Next question is question number 20. What authentication and security features does Azure App Service provide? Here, the interviewer is trying to gauge your understanding in terms of do you know in depth about Azure App Service, particularly the security features. So let's populate the short answer. So Azure App Service provide a lot of built-in security features. Some of the things are what you see on the screen right now. So let me take you through one by one. First, help them understand that Azure App Service provide built-in security features designed to protect your web applications and data. And some of the key features are this. And let me help you understand one by one. First one is authentication and authorization. So tell that Azure App Service support multiple identity providers such as Azure Active Directory. Now it is known as Entra ID. You can sign in with Google, Facebook, that is known as Meta, a Microsoft account, Twitter, and things like that. Looks like all of these companies changed their name recently. And this allows you to authenticate users seamlessly. Second is with this authentication authorization, this allows you to configure access control policies to manage and restrict user access to your application, who have access to modify anything. Second feature you can highlight is SSL TLS encryption. Using this, it will automatically secures your application traffic with HTTPS by ensuring that all data transmitted between the server and the client are encrypted at all the time. So this provisions and manage custom domain SSL TLS certificates easily. Next is private networking. So if you look into private networking, this allows you to utilize the VNet integration to connect your application service to your Azure virtual network so that you can isolate your app from the public internet. So we talked about the network security group creating VNets. So this is exactly leveraging the VNet and the network security group to create a secure environment or a private networking environment for your application. Additionally, you can use private link to ensure that your web app is accessible only via private endpoints, and that will enhance your security even further. The next security feature you can highlight is managed identity. So what is managed identity? This will enable your application to securely access other Azure resources like Azure Key Vault, Azure Storage, and Azure SQL Database without the need to manage credentials. So this provides a way to authenticate to services that support Azure AD authentication natively. So these are some of the top security features you can highlight. There are some additional security features I can suggest, or you can say that you can use Azure Firewall rules to configure IP restrictions to allow and deny traffic from a specific IP address range, or you can suggest things like App Service Environment, or it is known as ASE, that provides a fully isolated, dedicated environment for securely running your application at high scale. Other feature is advanced threat protection that you can use to detect and mitigate any sort of potential threats by providing real-time alerts and recommendation. But if you feel like those are quite far-fetched and complex, just stick with these four primary security features provided by Azure App Service by default. Let's look at question number 21. What is the app service plan and how does it affect performance and cost? We kind of touched on app service plan when we talked about what is Azure App Service. So let me populate the short answer first, then we will go into the explanations. First, let's understand what is app service plan. An app service plan determines the pricing, performance, scalability of your application service. And it defines the region. Region is nothing but a data center of the physical server where your application service is hosted and the number of resources. These resources are nothing but CPU, memory, and storage allocated to your application. What you see here on the screen right now below this is the app service plan tiers. So if you remember when we looked into the virtual machine, I showed you different types of virtual machines you can pick, and each virtual machine is created for a specific purpose and each have a different cost associated with it. Similarly, in app service, these are all the plans available. So let me take you through this one by one. The first one is free or shared F1 D1. So this is useful for any sort of basic hosting for testing purposes, or ideal for any sort of low traffic applications and development environments. Next, we have the basic tier. Basic tier is suitable for small scale web application with manual scaling. This offer you moderate performance with limited features. Then comes the better plans. So when you go tier higher, the performance will increase and the feature set will increase too. Next is the standard one. This provides auto scaling. So if you remember, I talked about the basic one. Here you will have to manually scale, but in the standard one, we have an option for auto scaling and you have extra load balancing capabilities that makes it appropriate for any sort of production workloads. Next, we have the premium P1 version 2, P3 version 2. This provides you advanced performance, faster scaling, and additional networking features. This is perfect for high traffic applications and enterprise level solutions. And the last tier is isolated. This is usually for any sort of private dedicated environment for high security applications. This ensures that full isolation and compliance with regulatory requirements. So these are some of the tiers. So if you want to understand other aspect of it, if you go back to the previous questions, I kind of mentioned about the benefits of app service plan, including the scalability, flexibility offers. So let me quickly talk about some of the example and use cases. For development and testing, they probably use the free tier and the standard tier for building and testing new application without incurring high cost. Small business websites typically use the basic and free tier for an economical option for hosting small business websites. I don't think they will use the free tier, so they will particularly stick with the basic tier for small website hosting. And enterprise use this premium and isolated plans that are ideal for hosting any sort of mission critical enterprise application with stringent performance and security requirements. Let's look into question number 22. Which of the following is not a feature of Azure App Service? We are doing a deduction to find which is not a feature of Azure App Service. Let's go through one by one. Serverless computing. Serverless computing is a feature of Azure App Service because Azure App Service utilizes serverless computing features like Azure Functions, which allows you to run code without provisioning or managing services. The next is built-in DevOps integration. That is also a feature because Azure App Service offers seamless integration with Azure DevOps, GitHub, and other CI/CD tools, facilitating continuous deployment and development. Third is automatic scaling. Again, automatic scaling is also a built-in feature because Azure App Service can automatically scale up and down based on traffic, thus ensuring optimal performance and cost efficiency. So the wrong answer, which is not a feature for Azure App Service, is managed virtual machine. Managed virtual machine is part of an infrastructure as a platform service. Azure App Service is a platform as a service. So that concludes the Azure App Service section. Next, we are going to look into 3 questions on Azure Kubernetes Service or AKS. Let's look into the question number 23rd. What is Azure Kubernetes Service or AKS and why is it used? So if you don't know, let me populate the short answer, then I will give you the explanation. On a super high level, Azure Kubernetes Service or AKS is a managed Kubernetes service that simplifies deploying, managing and scaling containerized applications in Azure. And this comes with a lot of features and functionalities. So let me take you through this one by one. Why would you use AKS or Azure Kubernetes Service? First point is managed Kubernetes ability. Azure handles the updates, scaling, security, so you can focus on your application development. Next, cost effectiveness. So you can only pay for your virtual machines and not the control plane for making it the cost efficient solution at all. So you don't worry about the management layer. Azure will provide that for free. You only pay for the backend virtual machine where your AKS instances are running. Additionally, AKS or Azure Kubernetes Service provide you built-in monitoring capability, and this is integrated with your Azure monitoring and log analytics services, thus providing a robust monitoring insight. And next feature why it can be beneficial to use AKS in Azure is the scalability aspect of it. AKS can be built to automatically scale pods and nodes based on the demand, ensuring your applications run effectively under varying loads. Some of the other features which I can talk about is the high availability options, security, and the flexibility. Some of the use cases which you can think of is you can use AKS for development and testing, and by quickly spin up and manage isolated environment for development and testing. And it is ideal for deploying microservices based application, which allows for independent scaling and management of these services. AKS can be used for batch processing. It provides you an optimal resource utilization, or you can use it for high available applications as well. Let's look into question number 24. This is a scenario based question. Let's read out the question number 24. Your team needs to deploy a microservices based application with high availability and auto scaling. How would Azure Kubernetes services help? So key points here is microservices based, high availability and auto scaling. So let's populate the short answer. To ensure high availability and auto scaling, you can use Azure Kubernetes services these features. So these are some of the features which are offered by AKS for high availability and auto scaling. So let's take you through one by one. Horizontal pod autoscaler or HPA. This automatically increases or decreases the number of pods based on observed CPU or memory usage. And this ensures that your application can handle varying loads efficiently. The next feature is cluster autoscaler. If you use cluster autoscaler, this will adjust the number of worker nodes in your cluster based on the demand of your workloads. And this will help in optimizing resource utilization and reducing cost. Another feature you can highlight is load balancer and ingress controller. If you use this feature, this will help you distribute incoming traffic across multiple pods, which will ensure no single pod becomes bottleneck. And this enhances the reliability and availability of your application. And the next feature is the node pools. This allows you to run different types of workloads on different VM sizes within the same cluster. This provides flexibility in managing resources and optimizing performance. So use these high-level features to talk about why you should be looking at Azure Kubernetes Service to help deploy this microservice-based application with high availability and auto-scaling. Additionally, you can talk about some of the use cases which we mentioned before, like development and testing, microservices, batch processing, high availability applications, things like that. Question number 25, it's a multiple choice question. Which of the following is not a feature of Azure Kubernetes Service? We are going to go through the detection method we used before. First, is it not a fully managed control plane? I kind of explained that at the beginning. AKS provide you with a fully managed control plane so that you only pay for the backend virtual machine, you don't pay for the control plane. So that is definitely a feature of AKS. Second is built-in support for container orchestration. 100% AKS have all the features and tools and mechanism in place to support the container orchestration by default within the service. The next is automatic application deployment without configuration. That is the wrong answer because AKS provide infrastructure management, but the application deployment require configuration via Kubernetes manifest or Helm charts. So it doesn't provide you automatic application deployment and configuration. So that is something you need to keep in mind. And the next one is, does it integrate with Azure Monitor and Azure Security Center? 100% yes. That provides you with rich insight and intelligence into how these services running. And Azure Security Center offers you additional security around these Azure Kubernetes service microservices as well. In the next section, we are going to go through 3 questions on Azure Functions. Azure Functions is a serverless computing offering. Let's go through that. Question number 26. First and foremost, what is this Azure function and how does it support serverless computing? Let's populate the short answer. Azure Functions is a serverless compute service provided by Microsoft Azure, which allows developers to run event-driven code without the need to explicitly manage or provision infrastructure. This means that developers can focus on building and deploying their application without worrying about the underlying server management. So that is the main key benefit. It's like a code as a service. Some of the key features of Azure Functions include automatic scaling, paper execution, multiple triggers, and it has integrated security monitoring and things like that. So you need to sprinkle in these key features explaining about that in detail. Let's look at question number 27. Your application need to process images uploaded to Azure Blob storage automatically. How can Azure Functions help? So this is a scenario based question. So you can explain this by telling Azure Function can automatically process uploaded image using an Azure Blob storage tier. How? You can use things like trigger, processing, storage notification, things like that. So there is something called trigger within Azure Function. And when you use trigger, the function runs whenever a new image is uploaded to a specified block container. Then there is a option called processing. And the function can resize, compress, or analyze the image based on that processing. And finally, you can use the storage and notification for processed image can be stored in another location, and a notification can be sent for telling you that that job is done or that job is failed, things like that. So how do you explain the answer? So you can probably tell by explaining like an example. A function is triggered when a new image is uploaded to a designated blob storage, and then the function can perform various processing tasks on the image such as resizing, compressing, or analyzing. And then after processing the image, it can be stored in a different location, and additionally a notification can be sent to inform the user or the system about the completion about the processing task. Let's look into question number 28. Which of the following billing model does Azure Function use in the consumption plan? We are doing a detection here. First, let's understand what is this consumption plan. In the consumption plan, you only pay for the time your Azure function runs based on the execution count, memory, and the execution time. This model provides great flexibility and cost efficiency for applications with varying workloads. So let's look at these options. Pay for reserved virtual machine. That's a wrong answer because that's a virtual machine service to reserving your instances to reduce cost. Pay for memory allocation only. There is no option like that. Pay for number of execution and execution time 100%. In the consumption plan, you only pay for your time of your function runs based on the execution count, memory, and the execution time. And pay a flat monthly fee. That is a wrong answer. So the correct answer is pay for number of execution and execution time. So what are some of the use cases of Azure Function? You can use it for event-driven application that require any sort of process based on specific triggers, or you can use it for background tasks such as image processing, data transformation, and file conversions, or you can use it for APIs and microservices architecture where functions are invoked in response to HTTP request. The next one is Azure Virtual Desktop. We have 8 questions to go over that. Let's go through this one by one. What is Azure Virtual Desktop or AVD, and how does it work? Here the interviewer is trying to understand your knowledge on what is AVD and give some use case scenarios on how it works. Let's populate the short answer. So you can explain Azure Virtual Desktop as a cloud-based desktop and application virtualization service that enables secure remote access to virtual desktops and apps from any device. It can be a mobile device, it can be your laptop, it could be Windows 10 or Windows 11 or a Mac operating system. And this provides a comprehensive solution for organizations looking to offer their employees a flexible and secure way to access their work environment from anywhere. That's what Azure Virtual Desktop is, and I'm sure many of you already know about it. The important thing you need to help them understand is the key features of Azure Virtual Desktop. So these are multi-session optimized for Microsoft 365 apps, its security and integration with FSLogix. So let me help you understand these features one by one. First, let's look into multi-session. AVD allows multiple users to share the same virtual machine, providing a scalable and cost-effective solution. That is what we call multi-session in Azure Virtual Desktop. The second feature is optimized for Microsoft 365 apps. So this seamlessly integrates with Microsoft 365 applications such as Word, Excel, and Outlook, ensuring a smooth user experience. Third feature you can highlight is secure remote access with Azure AD or Entra ID authentication. So you can utilize Entra ID for authentication and access control, ensuring secure connection to your virtual desktop. Only the right users will be able to sign in and use the Azure Virtual Desktop. And another feature is integration with FSLogix for user profile management. So as you already know that AVDs allows you to use FSLogix technology. So when you use that, it allows you to store user profiles, providing a consistent and seamless experience regardless of the device you use to access the virtual desktop. Additional feature you can highlight is the application virtualization part of it, and just throw in some of the benefits of Azure Virtual Desktop, which include flexibility, cost efficiency, and things like that. So, where would you typically use this Azure Virtual Desktop? So, if they ask about some of the use cases, you can tell that Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 are used in remote work, which enables employees to securely access their work environment from home or other remote locations. Second is temporary staff. This allows you to quickly provision a virtual desktop for temporary or seasonal workers without the need for additional hardware. Another use case is disaster recovery. This provides a reliable backup solution, ensuring business continuity in the event of a disaster. Or you could use AVD for any sort of development and testing as well. Let's look into question number 30. The interviewer is trying to understand, do you know what are the key components of AVD or Azure Virtual Desktop deployment? So when you try to deploy AVD, what are the things you need to be aware of? So let's populate the short answer. When you try to deploy Azure Virtual Desktop, you need to be aware of these terms and these services like host pool, session host, Azure AD identity services, FSLogix profile container, and network connectivity. So let me take you through one by one. First, what is this host pool? Host pool is a collection of virtual machines that host Windows 10 multi-session or Windows 10 single session or Windows 11 multi-session or Windows 11 single session or any server remote desktop services or applications as well. So it's a bunch of machines that you are trying to host your service. Next is session host. These are the virtual machines within the host pool that users connect to in order to access their desktops and applications. Next is, what about Azure AD identity services? This provides essential authentication and access control integrating with your on-prem services or your Azure AD for secure login. We already mentioned about FSLogix and profile containers. This is used to store the user profile. When you do that, this will ensure that the users have a consistent and personalized experience, whichever device they use to sign in. And last but not the least is the network connectivity component. You can utilize Azure VPN or any other VPN to integrate with on-premises environment, ensuring robust and secure connections. So each AVD deployment consists of these several key components. When you deploy it, it works together to deliver the seamless virtual desktop experience. All of this is kind of working together hand in hand to make the experience user friendly and maintaining the service availability of the service. Let's look at question 31. This is a scenario based question. Your company has employees worldwide who need secure access to company applications from personal device. How can AVD help? It's a good question. So let's populate the short answer so that gives you the pointers to highlight how can AVD help in this particular scenario, like worldwide secure access, accessing from personal device, things like that. First, help them understand AVD provides secure remote access from any device, conditional access to restrict unauthorized access, multi-factor authentication for additional security, FSLogix for personalized user experience and auto scaling to optimize cost based on usage. But how do you explain these things in detail? When you explain about secure remote access, highlight the fact that employees can securely access their work environment from personal or company provided devices, ensuring productivity from remote location. All the security is all baked into Azure Virtual Desktop, or you have additional security controls you can put in place so that you can provide this secure experience for the users from their personal device. Second, highlight how conditional access can help. By implementing these conditional access policies to restrict access based on certain condition. These conditions could be based on a user location, device compliance, and risk level. Next is multi-factor authentication. Here you are emphasizing the fact about adding an extra layer of security by requesting users to verify their identity through multiple methods before accessing the virtual desktop. So one of the method is conditional access, another method could be a multi-factor authentication. The next one is FSLogix profiles. This allows a consistent personalized user experience for storing their profiles separately and in a secure manner and allowing for a faster and more reliable logins. And another secure feature you could highlight is the auto scaling aspect. It can automatically adjust the number of running virtual machine based on the demand, optimizing cost and resource usage. Let's look at question number 32. How does AVD support cost optimization and scalability? Let's populate the short answer. AVD can optimize the cost through auto scaling. We talked about it by automatically turning off idle VMs or providing multi-session on Windows 10 and Windows 11. This reduces the VM count by allowing multiple users on a single VM, or reserved instances. This can save up to 72% on long-term VM commitments, and storage optimization by providing FSLogix with Azure files. This minimizes the storage cost as well. So let's look into these one by one. Let's talk about how auto scaling can help you reduce the cost of AVD and allows scalability. Like I mentioned before, when you enable auto scaling, this will automatically turn off idle VMs to reduce unnecessary resource consumption, and that will reduce the cost as well. With AVD, you can monitor the usage pattern and adjust the number of running virtual machines dynamically, ensuring that only the necessary resources are utilized. Then look at the multi-session offer for Windows 10 and Windows 11. This is not available at the moment on Windows 365. So this will allow multiple users to share a single virtual machine, significantly reducing the number of virtual machines required. And this feature enables organization to maximize the usage of their virtual machine, thereby decreasing the overall cost of deployment and maintenance. Then we have reserved instances. When you purchase these reserved instances, this provides significant savings. What I heard is up to 72%. But you have to commit to a long-term virtual machine usage. So some organization, they tend to do that. So they plan their virtual machine need in advance and they purchase these reserved instances at a lower price compared to a pay-as-you-go pricing. This will lead to a substantial cost reductions. And the next one is the storage optimization. We talked about the FSLogix. So this is where it is going to utilize FSLogix in combination with Azure files to minimize the storage cost by efficiently managing user profiles and data. FSLogix containers improve the performance of the profile loading and application data, while the Azure file provides the scalable, because we need to address the scalability part of that in the question as well. So along with the FSLogix, you are talking about Azure files, which takes care of the scalability and the high performance storage solution need. So the combination of FSLogix and Azure files helps the customer lowering the storage expenses and enhance the overall user experience. Let's look at question number 33. What authentication and security features does AVD provide? So this is primarily looking to understand, do you know the special security and controls you can put on top of AVD? We address few of the things. Let's anyway populate the answer. We kind of talked about the MFA and conditional access, but there are a couple of additional things I just want to mention, because if you are asked about the security features, you need to mention about the additional components as well. So let's go through these one by one. The first one is Azure AD authentication and conditional access. Azure AD is nothing but your Entra ID. This ensures that only authorized users can access resources based on specific conditions, such as user attributes and device status. Next is multi-factor authentication. We talked about that in a couple of questions ago. Whenever you use MFA or multi-factor authentication, this adds an additional extra layer of security by requiring the user to provide two or more verification method before gaining access to AVD. We haven't talked about the next three options, which is role-based access control or RBAC. RBAC allows organization to manage access to resources by assigning roles to users based on their job function, ensuring users have only the permissions they need. The next one is network isolation via private link and VPN. This these options will show your depth of knowledge in Azure during these interview questions. So with the network isolation and private link and VPN, you can enhance the security by isolating the network traffic from public internet access, ensuring that the data is only accessible through secure connections. And the last one is data encryption at rest and in transit. You can protect sensitive information by encrypting data both at rest and in transit. This will ensure that the data remains secure even if intercepted. So highlight these facts when somebody asks about the authentication and security features on particularly Azure Virtual Desktop. The next question, the interviewer is trying to understand what is your level of knowledge on FSLogix. The question is, how does FSLogix improve user experience in Azure Virtual Desktop? So first, help them understand what is FSLogix. Tell them that, hey, FSLogix is a profile management solution that is designed to enhance the user experience in Azure Virtual Desktop. It achieves this by storing user profiles separately from session host, which offers a lot of advantages. And some of these advantages are what I highlighted here. So let's go through this one by one. First is seamless user experience. By maintaining consistent user profile across different sessions, FSLogix ensures that users have a seamless experience. This means that the settings of their user, the preferences, and the files remain consistent no matter which virtual desktop a user logs into. Another benefit is the faster login you get with FSLogix. When you incorporate FSLogix, it reduces the login time by dynamically attaching user profile to the session. This results in quicker access to the virtual desktop environment, leading to increased productivity. And the third benefit you can highlight is this is optimized storage, because FSLogix uses Azure Files or Azure NetApp files for profile storage, ensuring that storage resources are utilized effectively. And this helps in managing large number of user profiles without compromising performance. Some additional benefit, if you want, you can think of is reduced profile corruption, because since the profiles are not tiered to a single session host, the risk of profile corruption is minimized. This ensures a more stable and reliable user experience. Another benefit is scalability. FSLogix allows organizations to scale their virtual desktop infrastructure easily, and as user profiles are managed separately, adding or removing session host does not impact the user data. One more benefit I can highlight is the enhanced security. By isolating user profile from the session host, the FSLogix add an extra layer of security. It ensures that the user data is protected even if one of the session hosts is compromised. Let's look into question number 35. Here, interviewer is trying to understand, do you know the licensing requirement for the Azure Virtual Desktop? Let's populate the short answer, then I will help you understand in a detailed manner. First and foremost, these are all the license which is required for running the Azure Virtual Desktop. M365 E3 or E5, you need to have Windows 10 or 11 Enterprise E3 or E5, either a Microsoft 365 Business Premium or RDS CALs for your Windows Server. So these are the main requirement. So Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 will provide you the productivity suite of applications, usage right, and things like that. Windows 10 and Windows 11 Enterprise will give you the operating system level of licensing to use. M365 Business Premium, it is either this or that, will provide you anyway. If you use the Business Premium, you get the Business Premium Productivity Application Suite. If you don't want that, you definitely need an RDS client access license to sign into these Windows servers to access the AVD session host and things like that. So if you want to know a bit more than what I provided, click on this link to understand more on the licensing aspect of Azure Virtual Desktop. The next is a multiple choice question. Which of the following is not part of Azure Virtual Desktop? So we need to use a deduction method to understand that. So let's go one by one. Multi-session Windows 11 support, 100%. One of the key benefit of Azure Virtual Desktop is it offers you multi-session capability. It could be either for Windows 10 or Windows 11 or Windows Server operating system as well. So that is definitely a part or a feature of Azure Virtual Desktop. The next option is built-in FSLogix profile management. We talked about so much about FSLogix so far. So you would have understand the benefits of FSLogix, why it is important. It is really to manage, better handle your profile management for the users. Wherever they are signing in, they get better experience, more secure and seamless in their profile management handling. So that is definitely a feature of Azure Virtual Desktop. The third option is auto scaling host pool. I think we talked about in first or second question in the AVD section, where auto scaling is part of the solution, where you have an ability to either scale up or scale down based on the demand, or you can do that for cost reduction or cost optimization purpose as well. The next option is on-prem Hyper-V deployment. That is the wrong answer. So this is primarily to deploy this Azure Virtual Desktop in the Azure service as a platform as a service offering, not a solution for your on-premises Hyper-V deployment. Now let's look into the next section. The next section, it's all about Azure storage, and we are going to go through 11 questions. Question number 37. What is Azure Blob storage and how does it differ from other storage type in Azure? So here the interviewer is trying to gauge your understanding about, do you know clearly about blob storage and can you differentiate it from other types of Azure storage? Let me populate the answer first. The short answer is Azure Blob Storage is a highly scalable object storage service designed for storing vast amount of unstructured data. And these unstructured data could be in the form of images, videos, logs, and backups. And it is optimized for both read and write operations, making it an ideal solution for a wide range of applications that require efficient data storage and retrieval. So first, let's look into other types of storage options available. Then we will look into the differentiation. First, the other type of Azure data storages include Azure Files, which is designed for file share accessible via SMB. Then Azure Disk, this is like a block level storage for virtual machine. This is what we have seen in one of the example before. Azure Tables, this stores structured NoSQL data. Then we have Azure Queues, which is used for messaging between components. Now let's look into these one by one. What is the main purpose of Azure Files? Azure Files are designed for file share accessible via SMB and NFS protocol, which allows multiple VMs to share the same file. So you can think of this as your on-prem file server, and then you have an SMB file share drive attached to your local devices. The only difference is this is coming from the cloud and it's a service offering, not coming from a virtual machine. Next is Azure Disk. So like I mentioned, this provides the block level storage for your VM, and this supports the persistent storage for your virtual machine. This is what we had seen before about examples about standard SSD, premium SSD, normal hard disk. They are all part of this particular Azure Disk Service. Then we have Azure Tables. Like I mentioned, it stores the NoSQL data, which is useful for quickly querying data using key and attribute store. This is mostly used by applications as the backend data store. Then we have Azure Queues. This is primarily used for messaging between components, and this ensures reliable communication in distributed application format. So we understood some of the differences about these other services available. Now, compared to that, how does Azure Blob Storage different? Some of the use case what you can think of Azure Blob Storage include, you can think of using it for backup and restore. Blob storage could be ideal for storing backup copies of databases, files, and other critical data. And you can think of Azure Blob Storage for content distribution as well, wherein in Azure Blob Storage, you can store and deliver multimedia content such as images, audio, and video to users worldwide. Another use case for Azure Blob Storage is you can use it for big data analytics. This is perfect for storing large data sets that can be analyzed using Azure Analytics Service. An example of that Azure Analytics Service is Azure Data Lakes Analytics. Then you can use this Azure Blob Storage to store log storage. You can efficiently store log files generated by applications and system for auditing and other monitoring purposes. So now you learned about what is Azure Blob Storage, what are some of the use cases for Azure Blob Storage, and what are the other types of Azure storage available. Using these learning, you can now to do some comparison to give a good answer. Question number 38. What are the different types of Azure Blob Storage? When should you use it? In the previous question, we learned about what is Azure Blob Storage and how is it different to other services. The next question is, there is apparently some different types of Azure Blob Storage. So how do you explain that in detail? All right, so first let's populate the short answer. The short answer is, by default, Azure Blob Storage supports 3 types of blob. What are these? These are block blobs. This is optimized for large files to store images and videos. Then we have append blobs. This is ideal for any sort of log files that require frequent appends. And then we have page blobs. This is used for VM disk and random read-write operations. Now, let me help you understand this one by one, giving you a bit more explanation. First, block blobs. I already talked about it. These blobs are optimized for storing large files such as images, videos, and documents. They are ideal for scenarios where files need to be uploaded and retrieved quickly. Some of the key features are efficient storage for large files. This supports high throughput operations and allows parallel uploads for faster transfers. Some of the use cases are, you can use it for storing multimedia content, hosting websites and application, and backup and disaster recovery. Now let's learn about append blobs. These blobs are designed for scenarios where data need to be appended frequently, such as logging. And these append blobs are ideal for applications that require constant update to the stored information. Some of the key features of append blobs include, this is optimized for append operations. This ensures data integrity during updates, and this supports high transactional workloads. So where are the most use case scenario for this using the append blobs? Some of the most common use cases include storing application logs, maintaining audit trails, and recording transactional data. The next is page blobs. These blobs are used for scenarios that require random read-write access, such as virtual machine disk. Page blobs are designed to store large amounts of data and support operations that need efficient read-write capabilities. So what are the key features of it? This support random read-write operations, efficient handling of large data volumes. Like you can imagine, like the large volumes you can attach on your server for any read-write operations. Provides high IOPS. IOPS is input output operations per second. And some of the use cases are storing virtual machine disk, database storage, and data processing and analysis. So all in all, Azure Blob Storage offer versatile and scalable storage solution to meet a wide range of application needs, making it a powerful tool for modern data management. Let's look at question number 39. Here, the interviewer is trying to understand your knowledge on what is Azure Files and how does it enable file sharing across multiple VMs. Let's first populate the short answer. First, let's understand what is Azure Files. Azure Files is a fully managed file share service that allows multiple virtual machines and application to access files using the SMB protocol. SMB is server message block, or NFS protocol, that is network file system protocols. And it provides an easy and secure way for applications and users to share files across different environments. Let us look into some of the key features of it. Some of the key features of Azure Files include cross-platform support. This facilitates network file sharing between Windows, Linux, and Mac operating systems. It allows for easy integration. You can mount as a drive on a local machine or accessed via REST APIs for seamless integration with application. And it supports Azure File Sync, which allows synchronization of files across multiple locations, enabling access to the latest versions of files from any location. Some of the key benefits of using Azure Files include it is cost effective compared to any other on-premises file servers. Second benefit is easy management because this reduces the complexity of managing the file servers and storage infrastructure. It offers you global access. This enables access to files from anywhere in the world, enhancing collaboration and productivity. And some of the use cases include you can have an Azure file share used by multiple employees in your organization from different geographic location. That is one of the use case. Another one is for application data storage. You have a centralized storage solution for application data, or you could use it for backup and restore as well. So you can think of any scenario where it is applicable to use Azure files. Let's look into question number 40. How does Azure Disk Storage differ from Azure Blob Storage? So here we are trying to understand what is the main difference between Azure Disk and Blob Storage. Let's populate the short answer. First, the Azure Disk Storage is a block level storage because that is attaching your disk to your virtual machine. And this is used mainly for virtual machine, and whereas blob storage is an object storage optimized for large scale unstructured data. So this is where you will have data stored for your application, your images, multimedia content, all unstructured data goes into the blob storage. I do have a table which highlight some of the key features. First and foremost, Azure Disk Storage is a block storage VM disk and databases attached to VM. Just to give you an understanding, Azure Disk Storage provide high performance, durable block storage designed to be used with Azure Virtual Machine. This is ideal for applications that require frequent read-write operations. Whereas the blob storage is object storage optimized for large-scale unstructured data. Each serves different need and has different use cases based on what you see on this table. The next question is 41 and it's a scenario based question. Your team needs to store a large amount of IoT telemetry data. Which Azure storage service should you choose and why? So based on all the things I explained 2 questions back, can you actually guess what is the answer if you're watching sequentially? So let me populate the short answer. The solution what you can propose is Azure Table Storage or Azure Cosmos DB. We haven't talked about Cosmos DB, but we did talk about the table storage. So why do you think Azure Table Storage is the ideal choice? Because they want to store a large amount of IoT telemetry data. And these data are a structured NoSQL type of data, and table storage is ideal for that, and it can scale efficiently. And this Azure table storage provide fast key-based access to high-speed telemetry data processing. One of the example where you can actually ideally use is for IoT telemetry data, where you need to collect and store sensor data from thousands of devices for monitoring and analytics. Another use case for Azure Table Storage is for logging data. You can store application or system log for tracking performance and troubleshooting. Or if you want to use it to maintain user profile and session data for web and mobile application, that's another place where you can use it. I'm not going to explain Cosmos DB now. We will come to that part when we explain the databases. So till then, park your curiosity. Let's look into question number 42. What is Azure Queue Storage and how does it help in application decoupling? Let me populate the short answer. First, the Azure Queue Storage is a message queuing service that allows components of an application to communicate asynchronously. It is designed to help decouple and scale application by enabling reliable messaging queue between application component. What are some of the use cases of Azure Queue Storage? Some of the use cases include task scheduling, queue messages to schedule and manage background tasks such as processing orders or generating reports, or you could use it for load leveling as well. That will distribute tasks across multiple consumers to balance the load and prevent any one component from being overwhelmed. You could use for workflow management. This can coordinate complex workflow by passing messages between different services and components. And this provides quick access to the data using key-based queries, allowing for real-time processing and analysis. And this Azure Queue Storage can seamlessly integrate with other Azure services like Azure Functions, Azure Stream Analytics, Azure Data Lake, and other services for any sort of comprehensive data solution. Let's look into question number 43. What are the storage tiers available in Azure Blob Storage and how do they impact cost and performance? So what are the storage tiers available in Azure Blob Storage? Let me populate the short answer. First and foremost, Azure Blob Storage offers 3 storage tier to optimize cost. And then we have these 3 types. Let me help you understand what are these 3 types. First is the hot tier. Hot tier is designed for data that is accessed frequently, and this tier provides the fastest access time, but it comes with a higher storage cost compared to other tiers. Some of the benefits of hot tier include this is ideal for frequent access data, low latency retrieval, great for applications with high I/O requirement. Let's look into the cool tier. Cool tier is intended for data that is infrequently accessed and stored for at least 30 days. It offers lower storage cost than hot tier but has a slightly higher access cost and latency. And some of the benefits are this is cost effectively because for infrequently accessed data, it's cost effectively compared to the hot tier and lower storage cost and suitable for data backup, disaster recovery, and long-term data storage because you're not going to use it that frequently like a hot tier. The third tier is the archive tier. This is for most cost-effective storage option for data that is rarely accessed and stored for at least 180 days. And this tier has the lowest storage cost but the highest retrieval cost and latency. Some of the benefits are lower storage cost, designed for long-term data retention, and ideal for archival data, compliance, and historical data storage. Some of the examples are you can typically use the hot tier in active applications, streaming media, real-time analytics, and things like that. So that's where you typically use hot tier. Cool tier you will use for data backup, long-term data storage with occasional access and disaster recovery. And archive tier is where you use for historical records, compliance data, and archived media files which you don't want to access frequently. Question number 44. What is Azure Storage Account and what type of storage service does it support? So we haven't talked about the storage account yet. So let's populate the short answer. First, let's understand what is the storage account. So if you remember, I talked about the resource group. So it's Azure Storage Account is like a container for Azure Storage. So if you use any of these Azure Storage service like Blob Storage, File, Queues, Table, disk storage, it need a container to be saved. It need a place where it can reside. And storage account is the place where it will reside, like resource group. So how do you explain it? An Azure Storage Account is a container for Azure Storage Services, providing a unique namespace for your data in Azure. And it supports various types of storage services which can be used to store different types of data. Next, let's look into question number 45. How does Azure Storage encryption work and what options are available? Let's populate the short answer. First and foremost, Azure encryption ensures that the data is always encrypted at rest using AES 256 encryption. That is a key important point you need to understand. Second, what are the encryption options available? We have these three encryption options. Let's look at this one by one. First is the Microsoft managed keys. This is the default encryption method. This is managed by Microsoft, reducing the administrative burden on users. This ensures compliance with any sort of regulatory requirements you have in your organization. Second option is Customer Managed Keys or CMK. This allows users to manage their own encryption keys, providing full control over key rotation and deletion. And this utilizes Azure Key Vault for secure key storage and management. The third option is double encryption. And this acts as an extra layer of security by encrypting data twice, combines Microsoft managed and customer managed keys. This is ideal for highly sensitive data requiring enhanced protection. So why would you use Azure Storage Encryption? It is basically to enhance the security within your organization for your data, both in rest and in transit. And it could be used for regulatory compliance. And it offers you flexible offers, like you can either use the customer managed keys or you can use Microsoft managed keys. Example use case where customers might typically use is for either for protecting the financial data or healthcare information or any sort of corporate data. Let's look at question number 46. What is Azure Storage redundancy and what are the available options of this redundancy? We haven't talked about this so far, so this is a good topic. Let's populate the short answer. First, Azure Storage redundancy ensures data durability and availability using replication strategies. And what are these strategies? We have four options available. Let's go through this one by one. The first redundancy option is locally redundant storage or LRS. This stores 3 copies of your data within a single data center in the same region. This option offers basic protection against hardware failures but does not safeguard against data center level outages. The next redundancy option is Zone Redundant Storage or ZRS. This replicates your data across multiple availability options within the same region. And this provides higher availability and protection against data center failures within the region. And the third option is Geo-Redundant Storage or GRS. Using GRS, you can replicate your data to a secondary region geographically distinct from your primary region. So if you store your primary region data in US, you could choose the secondary region as Australia. This ensures data durability and availability even in the event of a complete regional outage. The fourth option is Read Access GRS or RAGRS. This offers all the benefits of GRS, that is geo-redundant storage, with the added ability to read data from the secondary region. This enhances data availability and provides a backup option for read-heavy workloads. In this section, we are going to go through Azure Virtual Network interview questions. We're going to go through 9 questions here. Question number 47. What is Azure Virtual Network or VNet, and what are the key benefits of Azure Virtual Network? We have went through a couple of examples when we discussed about virtual machine. Let's populate the short answer, then I will give you an explanation. The short answer is Azure Virtual Network is a fundamental building block for private network in Azure. This enables Azure resources like virtual machines and services to securely communicate with each other, the internet, and on-premises network. By providing a range of features and options, Azure VNet ensures that your network is flexible, secure, and scalable. Let's look at some of the benefits of Azure Virtual Network. First is isolation and segmentation. Within Azure Virtual Network, you will be able to define subnets to isolate resources and improve security. Second, this offers secure communication. You can use Network Security Group or NSG. If you remember, I showed you where to find that NSG in the Azure Virtual Machine Creation part, and we talked about NSG quite a lot in that section. So NSGs offer you to have a secure communication, and additionally, you can pair up with Azure Firewall to control traffic and protect against threats. Next is customizable IP address ranges. You can bring your own IPs or use Azure assigned ranges to fit your networking needs. You have plenty of options there. Another benefit is hybrid networking. You don't have to particularly always use the Azure provided virtual network. You can connect on-premises network to Azure VNets using VPN Gateway or Express Route for seamless integration. And finally, scalability. This supports thousands of connected resources, scaling as your organization grows. So, what are some of the use cases of using this virtual network? You can use it for hosting website. When you deploy your web application in a secure and scalable environment, you can isolate this. You will be able to run analytics on the performance of the secure connections for the data sources, or for hybrid workloads. So you can extend your on-prem data center to an Azure for hybrid cloud solutions. Question number 48. Explain how Azure Load Balancer work and its use cases. That's a good question. Let's populate a short answer. So what is Azure Load Balancer? Azure Load Balancer distribute incoming network traffic across multiple resources to ensure high availability and reliability. It operates at layer 4. Layer 4 include TCP, UDP, things like that, and supports both inbound and outbound scenarios. Typical use case for Azure Load Balancer are what you are seeing here. Let's go through this one by one. You can use Azure Load Balancer to distribute traffic. You can distribute incoming traffic across multiple virtual machines, ensuring no single virtual machine becomes a bottleneck. Next is high availability. You can enable high availability for application by distributing traffic across multiple instances. You can use it for outbound connections as well. You can provide outbound connection for virtual machines inside the virtual network, ensuring VMs can communicate with external resources. Other use cases, you can use it for health props. You can use health props to monitor the status of your application and ensure traffic is directed only to healthy instances. And this Azure Load Balancer comes in two types. The first one is public load balancer. So what is public load balancer? You can use public load balancer to route traffic from the internet to Azure resources, providing high availability to application and services exposed to the internet. Next is internal load balancer. This helps you route traffic within an Azure virtual network, useful for balancing load between your internal resources. Let us look into question number 49. What is the role of Azure Application Gateway? We haven't talked about it yet. And how does it differ from Azure Load Balancer? Load balancer is one we have just explained in the previous question. So now we are going to understand what is application gateway and compared to the load balancer, how is it differ. First, let's populate the short answer. Azure Application Gateway is a web traffic load balancer that works at layer 7. The other one was layer 4. Layer 7 is the application layer. Unlike the load balancer, it can make routing decisions based on attributes of a HTTP request, such as URL path or host headers. Let's look into some of the key features of Azure Application Gateway. Like I mentioned in this paragraph, you can use Application Gateway for URL based routing, enabling you to direct a request to a specified backend pools depending on the URL. Another feature is SSL termination. You can offload SSL processing from backend servers, simplifying SSL certificate management and improving backend performance. Another feature is Web Application Firewall or WAF. This protects applications from common web vulnerabilities and attacks such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting. Now let's look into the differences compared to the load balancer. If you are not quite sure about load balancer, go back to the previous question to understand that. Some of the high level differences what I mentioned here is load balancer operates at the network layer, which is layer 4, and routes based on IP address and port, while application gateway operates at the application layer, that is layer 7, and routes based on URL or HTTP request. Another difference is the routing capability. Load balancer provides basic round robin or hash based routing, whereas application gateway offers advanced routing capabilities like URL based routing and multi-site routing. And there is some slight difference in terms of security features as well. Load balancer lacks built-in security features, wherein application gateway integrates with your web application firewall for enhanced security. Let's look into question number 50. Describe Azure Firewall and its main capabilities. First, understand what is Azure Firewall. Azure Firewall is a cloud-native managed network security service that is designed to safeguard Azure Virtual Network resources. Additionally, it provides comprehensive protection through its stateful inspection capabilities, high availability, and ability to scale without restriction in the cloud environment. So, what are the main capabilities of Azure Firewall? Let's go through this one by one. First, traffic filtering. Azure Firewall allows you to create rules for both inbound and outbound traffic, and this ensures that only sanctioned traffic is allowed to flow in and out of your network, thus protecting your resources from unauthorized access. The next capability is threat intelligence. One of the most significant feature of Azure Firewall is its integration with Microsoft Threat Intelligence feeds. This gives it the ability to detect and respond to known malicious IP addresses, domains by providing an additional layer of security. Let's look into the third capability. It's called FQDN filtering. FQDN means fully qualified domain name. And using the FQDN filtering, Azure Firewall can monitor and control traffic based on specific domain names. And this is particularly useful for enforcing policies on applications that rely on domain names. Next capability is centralized logging. Azure Firewall supports centralized logging to Azure Monitor, storage, and Event Hub. This enables you to keep track of all network traffic and security related events, aiding in compliance and audit requirements. And the last one is application and network rules. This allows you to establish rules at both the application and network layers. This means you can control the traffic not only by IP address and port numbers but also by URLs and protocols. So that's what Azure Firewall and its main capabilities. So if you want to know more about it, click on this link to understand more. Question 51. What is Azure VPN Gateway and when should you use it? Let's populate the short answer. Azure VPN Gateway connects your on-premises network to Azure over an encrypted tunnel, ensuring a secure and reliable communication. And it supports multiple VPN configurations such as site-to-site VPN, point-to-site VPN, VNet to VNet, allowing for flexible and scalable network solution. What are some of the use cases of Azure VPN Gateway? First, you can use Azure VPN Gateway to extend your on-premises network to Azure. This will allow you to seamlessly integrate your existing network infrastructure with Azure, providing a unified and secure environment for your application and services. Next, Azure VPN Gateway enables secure communication between VNet to VNet communication. This is going to establish secure VNet connections, allowing different Azure virtual network to communicate with each other as if they were on the same local network. And finally, VPN Gateway provides remote users with secure access to Azure resources. And this will allow remote employees or clients to securely connect to Azure resources from anywhere in the world using point to site VPNs. Let's look into question number 52. It's a scenario based question. Your company wants to deploy a web application with high availability and application level traffic routing, example URL based routing. What Azure services would you use and how would you design the solution? I think 3 questions ago we talked about benefits of 2 different services. I'm sure you can guess that by now. I'm going to populate the short answer. The correct answer is Azure Application Gateway. So for this scenario, you should use Azure Application Gateway with Web Application Firewall as an additional feature. Azure Application Gateway, like I mentioned before, it's a layer 7 load balancing and support URL based routing, SSL termination, and session affinity, which are critical for deploying high availability web based application with precise traffic routing. So how do you design this solution? So let me help you understand this clearly. So what you can do is you can deploy 2 or more web application instances in Azure App Service or VM to ensure redundancy and high availability. And then you can place the web application instances behind the Azure Application Gateway to leverage its load balancing and routing capabilities. Third, you can go ahead and enable Web Application Firewall or Application Gateway to protect against common web vulnerabilities and threats such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting. Additionally, you can go ahead and configure Health Probe on Application Gateway to continuously monitor the health and responsiveness of your web application instances. Beyond that, you can go ahead and implement SSL termination at the security level at the application gateway to offload the SSL decryption work from your web application instances. And then you can utilize URL based routing to direct user traffic to different backend pools based on the URL path. When you do this particular setup, this ensures high availability, advanced routing, and application level security. Let's look at question number 53. This is a multiple choice question. Which of the following services provide centralized, fully stateful network traffic inspection in Azure? So let's go through this one by one. Is it Azure Load Balancer? No, Azure Load Balancer is a layer 4 service. It is not fully stateful. Is it Azure Application Gateway? No, it's a layer 7 service for URL based routing and web application firewall. Is it Azure Firewall? Yes. Azure Firewall is the one which offers stateful traffic inspection and filtering for both inbound and outbound traffic along with threat intelligence integration. And this service provides robust network security for Azure resources. Some of the key features of Azure Firewall include, like it is mentioned in the question, like stateful traffic inspection, threat intelligence. It is fully managed, it is highly available, and you can have application and network rule connections as well. The last option is Azure VPN Gateway, that is for connecting from your on-premises to Azure for secure connectivity. That is not the correct answer. So the correct answer is Azure Firewall. Let's look at question number 54. What is network security group? We talked about it a couple of times, and how does it differ from Azure Firewall? That's a really good question. We only talked about network security group and Azure Firewall separately, but we never clubbed it together and looked at the differences. So let's populate the short answer. First, network security group is a network security service in Azure that filters inbound and outbound traffic to and from Azure resources based on rules. How does it differ from Azure Firewall? Let's look into the differences. NSG operates at the subnet or the network interface level because you configure that directly along with your virtual machine creation. This is ideal for any sort of micro segmentation and providing granular control over network traffic, wherein the Azure Firewall is a centralized service offering comprehensive network security with advanced features such as threat intelligence, FQDN filtering, and application level filtering. You can actually go and use it together as a combined feature. NSG can be used for local subnet level filtering, while Azure Firewall provides global protection and centralized management and advanced security capabilities. Some of the high level benefits of NSG include granular control, ease of use, and scalability. And some of the high level benefits of Azure Firewall include centralized management, advanced threat protection, FQDN filtering, and high availability. Question number 55. How can you connect multiple VNets together, and what are the advantages of connecting like that? Let's populate the short answer. First and foremost, yes, you can connect multiple VNets together. The methods are either VNet peering or VPN gateway. Let's look into some of the advantages. First, it provides high speed connectivity. This ensures that fast communication between peered VNets with minimal latency. Next, it offers traffic between VNets stays private and secure, which remains within the Microsoft private network, which enhances the security. The third is when you do this peering, this is non-disruptive and maintains the network operational integrity during the setup. And you can enable easy sharing of resources such as databases, virtual machines, and application between these peered VNets. Let us go through database questions in the next section. So we're going to go through 10 questions in Azure databases. Let us look into the first question under database, which is question number 56. What is Azure SQL Database and what are its primary deployment options? Let's populate the short answer. First and foremost, Azure SQL Database is a fully managed relational database service that is built on SQL Server technology. It provides high availability, scalability, and security without the need to manage the hardware or database software. What are the primary deployment options available for Azure SQL Database? These are the three deployment options available. Let's look at this one by one. The first one is single database. This is a dedicated database with its own set of resources. Second is elastic pool. In this type of Azure SQL database, this offers shared resources among multiple databases for cost optimization. And the third is the managed instance. This is near 100% compatibility with your on-premises SQL server for lift and shift migrations. So some of the benefits of Azure SQL Database include automated management, so you can schedule automatic backup, updates and patching to simplify database management. Second, it offers high availability. You have built-in high availability with 99.99% uptime SLA. Built-in security features, advanced security features such as threat detection, encryption, and advanced data security. And it offers all sort of compliance you need for regulatory standards such as GDPR, HIPAA, ISO, IEC 27001, etc. Let's look at next question 57. Oh, we talked about Azure Cosmos DB. Here it comes. So what is Azure Cosmos DB and how does it differ from SQL database? First, let's understand what is Azure Cosmos DB. Azure Cosmos DB is a globally distributed multi-model NoSQL database service designed for high throughput and low latency at a global scale. So how does it differ from, so before even getting into the differences, let me quickly help you understand what are some of the benefits of Cosmos DB. First, the performance. So Cosmos DB is optimized for high throughput and low latency, making it suitable for mission critical application. Second benefit is global reach. Cosmos DB enables global distribution and local presence, reducing latency for users worldwide. The next is flexibility. Cosmos DB support multiple data models and APIs including SQL, MongoDB, Cassandra, Gremlin, and Table API. Another benefit of Cosmos DB is its scalability. It automatically scales resources based on workload requirements, ensuring consistent performance. And additionally, this provides inbuilt security for your encryption, access control, and auditing, etc. So, what are the use cases for Cosmos DB? Cosmos DB are primarily used for IoT application for real-time processing and analysis, or for personalized recommendation, delivering tailored recommendation to users based on behavior and preferences, or for real-time analytics, performing real-time analytics on large volume of data to gain actionable insights. So now that we understood what is Cosmos DB on a high level, how does it differ from Azure SQL Database? Let's go through this one by one. First is the data model. So Cosmos DB supports document, key value, graph, and column family data models, while Azure SQL Database is relational database. Second is global distribution. Cosmos DB offers turnkey global distribution with multi-region write and replication. Azure SQL doesn't offer that. Latency for Cosmos DB, it's a single digit millisecond latency for reads and writes. And if you look at the scaling aspect of it, Cosmos DB provides automatic and elastic scaling of throughput and storage. So that's how you can explain what is Cosmos DB and how it is different to Azure SQL Database. Let's look at question number 58. Explain the concept of provisioned throughput in Azure Cosmos DB. So let's populate the short answer. Provisioned throughput in Azure Cosmos DB refers to pre-allocated resources measured in request unit per second, which is known as RU per second, to ensure predictable performance for operations such as reads, writes, and queries. This concept allows users to reserve a certain amount of throughput capacity, which ensures that their application can handle a specified number of operations consistently. Some of these benefits of this provision throughput is it offers predictable performance. By provisioning throughput, users can guarantee that their operations will have consistent performance, which is crucial for applications with stringent performance requirements. Second is cost efficiency. The ability to scale throughput up and down and use auto scale options ensure that users are only paying for the resources they need, making it a cost effective solution. And another benefit is high availability of Cosmos DB. Let's look at question number 59. What are the benefits of using Azure Database for PostgreSQL? Let's populate the short answer first. Azure Database for the PostgreSQL is fully managed open source database service based on the PostgreSQL database engine. It offers numerous benefits and features that makes it a robust choice for developers and businesses. So let's look at some of the benefits of it. Let's look at this one by one. First is built-in high availability. This ensures up to 99% or 99.99% uptime SLA, providing reliable performance for business critical applications. The next is the scalability of it. This allows independent scaling of compute and storage resources, ensuring users to adjust capacity based on workload demand. How does the Azure database for PostgreSQL fare on security? And this provide data encryption both at the rest and in transit, ensuring data protection and compliance with industry standards. Additionally, it provide automated backups. This facilitate point-in-time restore for up to 35 days, offering data recovery and backup management capabilities. And finally, it is hyperscale. This offers the option to horizontally scale across multiple nodes, making it suitable for handling large and complex workloads. So some of the common examples of using this particular service is either for web application. This is ideal for hosting dynamic web application require robust performance and scalability. Another aspect is data warehousing. This is suitable for analytical workloads that need efficient data processing and storage capabilities. You could use this for geospatial applications, which supports advanced geospatial data types and functions. And you could use this for financial services because this provides the security and reliability needed for handling sensitive financial data and transactions. Let's look at question number 60. Compare Azure database for MySQL with Azure database for PostgreSQL. So let's populate the short answer. First, both services are fully managed open source relational database offering, but they support different database engine and communities. So let's look into these differences on a super high level. If you look at Azure database for SQL, this is a fully managed service. It simplifies data management with automated backup, patching and monitoring, built-in high availability with automatic failover, advanced threat protection encryption is default. It can be easily scalable with multiple compute and storage resources independently, and this is commonly used for web application like WordPress, e-commerce platforms and content management system. The community which support this is the strong MySQL developer community and extensive documentation is available. If you look at the Azure database for PostgreSQL, this offers supports for advanced data types and extensions such as PostGIS and geospatial data. It uses the hyperscale. It enables horizontal scaling. We talked about that. It accepts complex queries. This excels in handling complex queries and large data sets. This also offers advanced security features including encryption, virtual network service endpoint, and threat protection. Additionally, this provides built-in high availability and disaster recovery options. This is typically useful for analytics, geospatial application, and complex transactional application. The community support here is leveraging the robust PostgreSQL community and comprehensive features like PostGIS. Let's look into question number 61. What is hyperscale Citus? I hope I am pronouncing it right. In Azure database for PostgreSQL, when should you use it? So let's populate the short answer. So Hyperscale extend Azure database for PostgreSQL by horizontally scaling queries across multiple machines. And it transforms a single node PostgreSQL database into a distributed database system, which is particularly beneficial for applications that demand high performance and scalability. Let's look at some of the use cases of this hyperscale. First is applications with large volume of data. This is ideal for scenarios where data sets exceed the capacity of a single machine. The next is multi-tenant SaaS applications. This supports efficient data distribution and isolation across multiple tenants. Another use case is real-time operational analytics. This enhances query performance for analytical workloads by distributing the load across multiple nodes. Some of the examples of this hyperscale in action is customer behavior analysis. You could use within the retail companies can use to analyze vast amount of customer data in real time, drawing insights to improve sales and marketing strategies. You can use it for fraud detection system. Financial institution can benefit from the enhanced processing power to detect and respond to fraudulent activities more efficiently. And geospatial data processing, where government and environmental organization can utilize Hyperscale to handle large geospatial dataset for mapping, tracking, and analysis process. Question number 62. How does Azure SQL Database achieve high availability? Let's populate the short answer. First and foremost, Azure SQL Database ensure high availability through built-in mechanism. What are these built-in mechanisms? First is geo-replication. This creates readable secondary databases in another or other Azure regions. Then it offers active geo-replication. They support disaster recovery scenarios. Then there is zone redundant deployment option. This enables you to distribute resources across multiple availability zones. And we have automatic failover. This provides database service automatically and it redirects connections to a healthy replica if failover occurs. When you combine these particular features, you will get up to 99.995% availability service level agreement for using this particular service. Let's look at question number 63. This is a scenario based question. The question is, you need to globally distribute database with multi-master rights and for a mission critical application. Which Azure service would you choose and why? Let's populate the short answer. For this particular scenario, the best choice is Azure Cosmos DB because it supports multi-region rights, providing active database configuration, and it offers single-digit millisecond latency, which ensures that you get 99.999% availability for read and writes. Some of the benefits of Cosmos DB include global distribution. Azure Cosmos DB is designed for global distribution and horizontal scaling, making it perfect for applications that need to be accessible from multiple locations around the world. So this particular setup is ideal for mission critical application requiring global reach with low latency. Question number 64. What is elastic pooling in Azure SQL Database and what are its advantages? Let's look into the short answer. First, elastic pool in Azure SQL Database allows multiple databases to share a pool of compute and storage resources, thus providing a cost-effective solution for managing databases with varying and unpredictable usage patterns. By allocating resources in a shared pool, you can optimize performance and cost, ensuring the database only consumes resources when they need it. Let's look at some of the key advantages of elastic pool. The first benefit is the cost savings. Instead of provisioning resources for each individual database, you only pay for the collective resource use for all databases within the pool. This is particularly beneficial for applications with intermittent or variable workloads. Second advantage is the auto scaling aspect of it. Resources are dynamically shared across databases within the pool based on their needs. This ensures that databases can scale up and down automatically without manual intervention, maintaining optimal performance. The third advantage is the simple or simplified management. Managing multiple databases becomes simpler as you can treat them as a single resource. This reduces administrative overhead and streamlines the operations. Other benefits include performance optimization and flexibility. So one of the use case scenario where you could think of this is you can think of elastic pools as an ideal for any sort of software as a service provider who host multiple customer databases with varying demand. For example, a SaaS provider offering a multi-tenant application can place all customer databases in a single elastic pool. This ensures that each customer database has access to the necessary resources during the peak usage time without incurring any cost of provisioning individual resources for each database. Let's look at question number 65. It's a multiple choice question. Which of the following is not a feature of Azure Cosmos DB? We have looked into Cosmos DB multiple times. Let's look into these options one by one. Does Azure Cosmos DB offer you multi-region write? Yes, that is a functionality of Cosmos DB. Second, can you use provisioned throughput. We just gone through a question explaining about the advantages of having provisional throughput within the Cosmos DB. That is a feature. Third is hyperscale sharding with Citus. It is not a function of Cosmos DB. So that is the correct answer. And does it offer tunable consistency levels? Yes, it does offer tunable consistency level as well. In this section, we are going to go through Entra ID, or formerly known as Azure AD or Azure Active Directory questions. We have 10 questions in this section. Let's look at question number 66. What is Microsoft Entra ID? This is formerly known as Azure Active Directory, and what are its key capabilities? Let's populate the short answer first. So Microsoft Entra ID is formerly known as Azure Active Directory, which is what we defined just now. And it is a cloud-based identity and access management service provided by Microsoft. It is designed to help organizations securely manage identities and control access to resources both in the cloud and on premises. Let's look at some of the key capabilities of Entra ID. First, it offers single sign-on. This allows users to access multiple applications with one set of credentials, enhancing user convenience and productivity. Another capability is multi-factor authentication, or MFA. We talked about this a lot. MFA provides an additional layer of security by requiring multiple forms of verification by reducing the risk of unauthorized access. Another capability is conditional access. This enforces policies based on specific condition like user device and location to ensure secure access to the resources. Next capability is B2B and B2C, business to business and business to consumer. So this enables secure collaboration with external partners and customers, facilitating seamless integration and interaction. And last, this is not the last feature, this is one of the top feature. There are a lot of other features as well, but this is quite important too. It's called privileged identity management, or PIM. This helps manage, control, and monitor access to critical resources, ensuring only authorized users have privileged access. So some of the benefits of Microsoft Entra ID include: this provides you enhanced security, improved productivity, streamlined management. It allows you to seamlessly collaborate with B2B or B2C, and it offers you compliance and governance controls as well. Let's look at question number 67. How does conditional access in Entra ID enhance security? Let's populate the short answer. First of all, conditional access is a powerful policy engine in Entra ID that automates access decisions based on specific condition, and it enhances security by ensuring that the right people have the right access under the right condition. So how does it work? First of all, it uses signals, and these signals could include a user. User is nothing but the identity of the user requesting the access. And then location. Location is the geographic location from which the access request originate. Or device, which type of device or what state of device being used to access. And finally, the risk level, that is assessment of potential security risk associated with the access request. Second is controls. So what are the options available within the control? First is require MFA. Require MFA ensure additional verification steps. The next one is block access. This will deny access based on specific conditions. And third is enforcing compliant devices. This allows access only to devices that meet compliance standards. So here you can see that there is an example laid out. This allows only access from a trusted location, or require MFA if accessing from an unfamiliar IP. Or other example could include blocking access to sensitive data when requested from a risky device, or require compliant device checks before granting access to corporate resources. So what are the benefits of this conditional access? This reduces the attack surface area By applying strict access policies, organizations can significantly reduce the number of potential entry points for attackers. Second, it ensures compliance. Only compliant devices and trusted users are granted access, which helps ensure adherence to security policies and regulatory requirements. Third, it helps you automate responses to risk. Conditional access policies can automatically enforce additional security measures to block access in response to detected risk, thereby enhancing overall security. Let's look at question number 68. What is Azure Security Center, which is now part of Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and how does it help protect cloud environments? So let's populate a short answer. Short answer is Azure Security Center, first and foremost, is integrated with Microsoft Defender for Cloud. It is a unified infrastructure security management system that strengthens the security posture of your environment by providing advanced threat protection and continuous security assessment. What are some of the key functions? Let's look into this one by one. First is security posture management. Azure Security Center continuously assess your environment security, providing you with a security score and tailored recommendation to improve your security posture. The next is threat protection. It offers real-time threat detection and response capabilities across your workloads, utilizing advanced analytics and threat intelligence to identify and mitigate potential risk. Third is multi-cloud support. This offers extending protection to environments hosted on AWS, GCP, and on-premises infrastructure, ensuring a consistent security posture across all your cloud resources. One other key functionality is regulatory compliance. Security Center helps you meet industry standards and regulatory requirements such as PCI DSS, ISO 27001, and others by offering built-in compliance assessment and reporting tools. Some of the benefits of Azure Security Center include you get comprehensive visibility into all your cloud environments, allowing you to quickly look and identify and address any sort of vulnerabilities and threats. You can use it for automated security management, and it is efficient in the cost aspect as well, because this reduces the cost of security management by leveraging integrated tools and automation, minimizing the need for additional security solutions. Let's look into question 69. What is Azure Key Vault, and how does it help manage secret certificates and keys securely? Let's look into the short answer. First and foremost, Azure Key Vault is a cloud service designed to securely store and manage secrets, encryption keys, and certificates. It plays a crucial role in safeguarding sensitive information and ensuring secure access control. Let's look into some of its capabilities. First is secret management. You can use Azure Key Vault to store and manage sensitive information such as API keys, passwords, and connection strings. Second, you can use Azure Key Vault for key management. You can create, control, and manage the lifecycle of encryption keys used to protect data. Third is certificate management. You can securely manage SSL, TLS certificates, including their creation, renewal, and deletion. And the fourth is hardware security models or modules or HSMs. You can additionally utilize FIPS 140-2 level 2 validated HSMs, that is hardware security modules, for advanced security compliance. So this Azure Key Vault offers you centralized secret management. It allows you for access policies and role-based access control. You can define who can access or manage the sensitive data, and you can scale up and down based on your security need without compromising the performance. Let's look into question number 70. Explain the concept of privileged. Let's look at question number 70. Explain the concept of privileged identity management or PIM in Entra ID. So let's populate the short answer first. So privileged identity or PIM is a service in Microsoft Entra ID that allows you to manage, control, and monitor access to important resources within your organization. And PIM helps ensure that privileged accounts are only granted access to sensitive resources when it is absolutely necessary, following the principle of just in time access. Let's look at some of the key features of PIM or Privileged Identity Management. First, time bound access. Privileged identity management grant permission only for a limited duration, reducing the risk of prolonged exposure to sensitive resources. The next is approval workflows. This require approval before elevating permissions to ensure that access is granted based on actual need and with oversight. Then you have audit logs and alerts. This helps you track privileged role assignment and activations, providing visibility and accountability for all privileged actions. Another feature is access reviews. With PIM, you can regularly review privileged access to ensure that only the necessary roles are retained and outdated permissions are removed. Couple of additional benefits or features include just-in-time access. So users can request elevation to requested or privileged roles only when needed, and access is automatically revoked after the specified time period. Additionally, you can enhance security by requesting additional verification before granting elevated permission like multi-factor authentication, things like that. Let us look into question number 71. How does Microsoft Defender for Cloud support regulatory compliance? Here the interviewer is trying to understand, do you know about the Microsoft Defender for Cloud and how it can help with the compliance purposes? Let's populate the short answer. Microsoft Defender for Cloud provides a robust support for regulatory compliance through various features. So let's look at what are these features. These features are continuous assessment, policy driven, built in templates, compliance dashboards, things like that. So let's go through this one by one. First is continuous assessment. How does that help with the regulatory compliances? You can help them understand by telling, hey, with continuous assessment, you can regularly monitor your Azure resources to ensure they comply with relevant regulatory requirements. Second is policy driven options. See, these policy driven enforcement allows you to utilize Azure Policy to automatically enforce compliance with standards and configurations. Third is built in templates. Microsoft has these built in or predefined templates which you can use it for standards such as ISO 27001, PCI DSS, NIST, and SOCTSP, which will make it easier to map resources to these frameworks. And additionally, you can take help of this compliance dashboard as well. This will provide a visual representation of your compliance status, allowing you to easily track and manage compliance effort. And it also supports exporting reports for auditing preparation. Let's look into question number 72. Here the question is, what is the role of managed identity in Azure and how do they enhance security? So here the interviewer is trying to understand, do you know about what is managed identity in Azure? So let's populate the short answer. The managed identity are a feature of Azure Active Directory, that is now Entra ID, which provides Azure services with an automatically managed identity in AAD. This identity can be used to authenticate any service that provide Azure AD authentication by eliminating the need to manage credentials manually. When you talk about the managed identity, there are two types. These are system assigned and user assigned. So let's look at these one by one. So what is system assigned? System assigned is a type of identity that is tied to the life cycle of an Azure resource, such as Azure Virtual Machine, Azure App Service, or Azure Functions app. When the resource is deleted, the identity is also deleted. The next type is the user assigned. This is a standalone identity that can be created independently and assigned to multiple Azure resources. This persists even if the resource which is it is assigned are deleted. So what are some of the benefits of managed identity? Let's look at some of the benefits. Let's go through this one by one. The first one is the managed identity allows you to do credential management. This eliminates the need to store credentials in your code or configuration file, reducing the risk of any sort of credential exposure. Second, it provides you with integration with other Azure services where managed identities can seamlessly integrate with other Azure services like Azure Key Vault, Azure Storage, and Azure SQL Database, enabling you for secure access. Third is enhanced security. Managed identity allows you to use token based authentication, which improves security by avoiding hard coded credentials and reducing the surface attacks. Another benefit is managed identity is easy to use. It simplifies the authentication process for developers, allowing them to focus on writing the code without worrying about the credential management. Let's look at question number 73. This is a scenario based question. Question is, your organization need to store API keys securely and retrieve them at the runtime of an Azure function. Which Azure service should you use and why? I introduced about this particular service which I'm going to talk about right now earlier in some other questions as well. The correct answer here is you should be suggesting an Azure Key Vault as a solution. If you look at why, these are some of the points which I want to highlight here. First, Azure Key Vault can be used to securely store the customer's API keys, connection strings, and other secrets. Second, Azure Function can directly integrate with the Key Vault. Third, additionally, it provides audit logs for any sort of secret access and lifecycle management. And then additionally, you should be explaining about why Key Vault, what are the benefits, things like that. We already talked about it. On a quick high level, Azure Key Vault ensure that the secrets are kept secure by providing fine-grained access control and encryption. The secrets and the keys are stored securely. Customers can reduce the need for developers to manage credentials manually. And Azure Key Vault provides automated key rotation and lifecycle management. So give them these sort of additional benefits as well. Let's look at question number 74. How does Microsoft Defender for Cloud integrate with Azure Policy for security governance? Let's populate the short answer. So first and foremost, Microsoft Defender for Cloud uses Azure Security or Azure Policy to enforce and remediate any sort of security configuration across Azure subscription. This integration helps organizations maintain compliance and secure their cloud resources effectively. Now, what are these integration points? First is ability to do policy assignments. Customers can define and enforce compliance standard across various resources within your Azure environment using these policy assignments. The next is recommendations. Defender for Cloud Apps maps security findings to Azure policy definition, providing actionable recommendations for any sort of improvement you need. Third is remediation. This supports auto remediation of security misconfiguration, ensuring continuous protection without any sort of manual intervention. So you can throw in other examples as well. You can tell that, hey, Azure Policy will allow you to integrate with Azure Security Center that leverages the Defender for Cloud integration with Azure Security Center to enhance threat detection and response capabilities. Additionally, you can generate comprehensive reports on compliance status, highlighting areas of non-compliance and providing insights for remediation. Let's look at question number 75. This is a multiple choice question. Which of the following is not a feature of Azure Key Vault? We are going to do a deduction. Let's go through this one by one. We already look into Azure Key Vault, so by now we should be knowing which one is the correct answer. First, can Azure Key Vault do secret management? 100% yes. That is the main purpose of Azure Key Vault. Second, can it host website hosting? No. That is Azure App Service is what you can use for any sort of website hosting. Next, can Azure Key Vault do key management? Yes. Can Azure Key Vault do certificate management? 100% yes. So if you look at the question number 73, we kind of explained about the features of Azure Key Vault. So you can read about more here in this reference link as well. So the correct answer for this question is public website hosting, which is wrong. Azure Key Vault cannot do public website hosting. In this last segment, we are going to go through multiple components of Azure. We're going to go through Azure pricing, TCO calculator, different ways you can do cost management and budgeting. We're going to go through questions on Azure Monitor. We're going to go through questions on service level agreement, things like that. In total, we have 25 questions within this segment. Let's look at the first question here. That is question number 76. What is Azure Cost Management and Billing, and how does it help organization? So first, help the interviewer understand what is Azure Cost Management. You can tell this by explaining Azure Cost Management and Billing is a comprehensive suite of tools provided by Microsoft designed to help organizations monitor, allocate, and optimize their cloud spending both in Azure and across other connected cloud environments. And then, how does this help the organizations? Let's help you understand these one by one. First key benefit is visibility into cloud spending. Azure Cost Management and the Billing provides you detailed insight into where the costs are being incurred, enabling organization to understand their spending patterns much better. The next is inbuilt budgets and alerting mechanisms. This allows you to set up spending limits and you will receive notification when certain thresholds are approached or exceeded. And this helps in preventing unexpected cost overruns as well. The third is the cost allocation. Azure Cost Management facilitate grouping of resources by tags or management group for any sort of chargeback purposes. This enables better financial management and accountability when various departments and projects work together for different Azure resources. They can work together or they can work independently as well. But you can do chargebacks based on which department is using that specific resources. The next is the built-in recommendations. So these cloud optimization recommendation provide you suggestions for how you can save cost and show you different opportunities, such as it will showcase you by purchasing the reserved instances or right sizing the resources how much money you can save on these. On top of it, you will get reporting and analytics capability to track spending trends. You can forecast future cost and generate detailed report for any sort of stakeholder. Let's look at question number 77. How can you set up budgets and alerts in Azure Cost Management? First, what is this budget? So you need to understand budget first before explaining how can you set up. So first, let them know that budget in Azure Cost Management allow customers to plan and track spending over specific period, and alerts notify the administrator when spending approaches exceed defined threshold. So how do you set this up? You can basically go to the cost management. There is a plus option for billing, and where you can click on budgets and it will allow you to add different budgets. You can either set up budget for different threshold, and these threshold could be 50% or 75% or 100%. And then you can specify the recipient for these budget alerts. So they will get notification based on whenever it nears a particular threshold. Let us look at some of the key benefits of this budgeting. First, it will allow you to detect these overspending early because these alerts enable timely intervention before the cost spiral out of control. Second, it allows you to take informed decision because these budgeting or these alerts provide actionable insight for better cost management and control. Third, you can align this spending with your organizational target because you can keep track of it. This ensures that the spending aligns with your financial target and your organizational objectives. Additionally, this budgeting offers clear visibility into your spending patterns, promoting any sort of transparency and accountability. By setting these limits, organization can proactively manage their spending. Let's look at question 78. What is Azure Pricing Calculator and how can it assist in cost estimation? So first, let's populate the short answer. The Azure Pricing Calculator is a free web-based tool designed to help users eliminate the cost of Azure services before deployment. By providing a detailed and customizable interface, this allows for accurate cost planning and budgeting to ensure financial efficiency. Let's look at some of the key features of Azure Pricing Calculator. First, the pricing calculator allows you users to choose from a wide variety of Azure services such as virtual machine, database, networking, and other for looking at the cost. Second, the configuration detail. So you can configure specific detail for each of these services, including you can pick a region, how does that affect the cost, or you can pick up different tier. When we studied storage, we studied about different tiers like hot, cool, and archive. So you will be able to pick and choose region, tier, and you can expect different type of cost estimate based on whichever option you choose. Third is the pricing model comparison. You can compare the cost between pay-as-you-go and reserved pricing models to determine the most cost-effective option. And finally, you can export and share these reports. This allows you to export the cost estimate for sharing with the team members, or you can keep it for record keeping purposes. Additional benefits include you can use this to help forecast your project cost accurately, or you can use it to promote transparency in cost estimation and allocation, making it easier to justify the expenses in your organization before using these Azure services. Let's look into question number 79. How does Azure Advisor provide cost optimization recommendation? So first, let's understand what is Azure Advisor. So let's go through what. So you might feel like why I'm reading through this. I just basically want to provide you a crisp definition so that you can actually read about it, and then you can keep that in your mind and articulate in your own words. So Azure Advisor analyzes your deployed services and provides actionable recommendation to help optimize resources and reduce any sort of unnecessary cost. It also leverages a comprehensive set of metrics and best practices to ensure that your Azure environment is cost efficient and performance optimized. Let us look into some of the key recommendations which you can talk about in your interview. One of the recommendations is the right size or shutdown of underutilized virtual machine. Azure Advisor identifies virtual machines that are underutilized and recommends resizing them to a more appropriate size or shutting them down to save cost. Second recommendation is reserved instances. This will give you recommendation for workload for consistent. First and foremost, it looks for any sort of consistent user patterns, and if can identify that, Azure Advisor suggests purchasing reserved instances to take advantage of significant cost savings for these resources. The next recommendation is delete idle resources. It could be either network gateways or unused disk. Azure Advisor will flag idle network gateways and unused disk, advising their removal to avoid unnecessary expenses. Another type of recommendation you get is you will get alerts from Azure Advisor recommending you utilizing existing on-premises licenses for your Windows Server and SQL Server in the Azure environment to minimize the cost. This is known as hybrid benefit for your servers and SQL Server. Let's look at question number 80. What is total cost ownership or TCO calculator, and how does it help organizations planning cloud migrations? Let's populate the short answer to help you understand what is TCO. The TCO or total cost ownership calculator helps businesses estimate the potential cost saving of migrating on-premises workload to Azure. So if you have not gone through this TCO calculator or Azure pricing calculator, please click on these links, the reference link, to go and navigate through that. It's fairly easy to understand, straightforward, and you can get a hang of it pretty quickly. So let's look at what are the key capabilities of TCO calculator. First, it allows you to compare the on-premises cost. These comparison could be from a hardware point of view, software point of view, or electricity or maintenance cost with Azure. Second, this has an ability for you to input custom data. These custom data could be your on-premises server specifications, your existing licenses purchased, or the current labor cost, what it is incurring you at the moment for any sort of accurate calculations. Third, it helps you generate detailed report and you can export these results for further analytics. Let's look at question number 81. What is Azure Monitor and how does it help in maintaining application health? So let's populate what is Azure Monitor first. Azure Monitor is a comprehensive service that collects, analyzes, and acts on telemetry data from Azure resources, application, and on-premises environment. This will help maintain the health and performance of your applications. And Azure Monitor provides full stack monitoring for application and infrastructure. And these performance metrics are in real time. Let's look at some of the capabilities of Azure Monitor. First, data collection. You can use Azure Monitor to collect metrics and logs from Azure resources, applications, and on-premises environments. Second, data visualization. You can visualize data with the built-in dashboards or custom dashboards you can use, which has ability to convert that into charts and workbooks to get a comprehensive view of your system health. Next capability is alerting. You can set up alerts to notify the team of any potential issues before they impact users, facilitating quick remediation. Next is integration. You can integrate with external tools like Logic Apps, ITSM, and Power BI for extended functionality and better insights. So some of the examples where you can use is if you have an e-commerce platform, you can use Azure Monitor to track the performance metrics and ensure smooth operation during peak shopping periods. Let's look at question number 82. What is Azure metrics and logs in Azure Monitor and how do they differ? We just now talked about Azure metrics and logs in the Azure Monitor, the previous question, but we never delved deep into it. So let's do that. So in Azure, first and foremost, in Azure Monitor, there are two components. One is metric, another one is log. How do they differ? First, let's look into the metrics. The metrics are the lightweight and ideal for near real-time monitoring. Because metrics are a numerical value that represents system performance and are collected at regular intervals. They provide a lightweight way to monitor the status of resources in near real time. Example of a metric is CPU utilization, disk I/O and memory usage, and this helps in capacity planning and trend analysis. The second type is called logs. Logs are the detailed records of events and traces that provides in-depth information about the operations of Azure resources. Logs are essential for detailed analysis and troubleshooting. Example of logs are activity logs, resource log, or diagnostic logs. Some of the benefits are logs provides comprehensive context for any sort of deep or in-depth investigation. This helps in identifying the root cause of issues. This is essential for auditing and compliance purposes. Let's go through question number 83. What is Azure Policy and how does it help enforce organizational standards? First, let's populate the short answer. Azure Policy is a governance tool that enables organizations to enforce rules and ensure compliance across Azure resources. Azure Policy provides a centralized way to create, assign, and manage policies to govern every resource in Azure. Let us look into some of the use cases of Azure Policy. You can use Azure Policy to enforce naming convention in your Azure resources, because sometimes when you let everybody create certain resources, you will end up having no specific set of naming convention followed within your organization. This forces everybody to follow a particular rule. Second use case is you can restrict location for resource deployment. You can target a specific region for production workload and another region for development or testing resources. Another use case is you can enforce security configurations are in place by looking into these policy violation. Some of the examples where you can apply Azure Policy include automatically tagging resources for environment information. You can enable diagnostic settings on virtual machine, or you can restrict usage of certain virtual machine sizes to manage cost. Let's look at question number 84. How does Azure Policy remediation work? So first, let's understand what is remediation. Azure Policy remediation helps correct non-compliant resources automatically. This feature is essential in maintaining governance and ensuring that resources are in line with organizational standards. What are the steps you can take to make it happen? First, you can define a policy with a remediation task. This involves creating a policy that includes specific remediation tasks designed to correct non-compliant resources. Second step is once the policy is set, Azure continuously monitor the resources to identify any of that do not comply with your defined policy. And when the non-compliant resources are detected, the remediation tasks are automatically initiated to bring these resources into compliance. So that is how the Azure Policy remediation work. Some of the benefits include automated governance, risk reduction, and cost management. Let's look at question number 85. What is Azure Blueprints and how does it simplify environment setup? Let's populate the short answer first. Azure Blueprints enables organization to define a repeatable set of Azure resources and policies to ensure consistent and compliant environment. They are particularly useful for managing complex deployment across multiple environments, ensuring that each environment adheres to organizational standards and regulatory requirements. What are these components included in the Azure Blueprint? Let's look at this one by one. First is role assignments. You can define who has access to what resources within the environment. Second is policy assignment. This ensures resources comply with organizational standards and policies. The next capability is ARM templates. This helps you deploy a predefined set of resources in a consistent manner. Another capability is resource groups. This helps you organize resources for better management and oversight. Question number 86 is a scenario-based question. Can you give a scenario where Azure Blueprints would be highly beneficial? So let's try to paint a picture of using a scenario. You can come up with your own scenario. This is the scenario which I could come up with. So the scenario is an organization where they need to deploy a production environment for multiple teams, ensuring all environments have security policies, monitoring, and compliance settings applied to them. So that's the scenario we are explaining. So the solution what you're proposing is using Azure Blueprint to package network setup, security policies, monitoring, and RBAC. When you do that, when you follow this and apply this solution, every environment is going to be consistently deployed with compliance baked in from the start, reducing any sort of manual errors and speeding up the deployment process. Because Azure Blueprint provide a powerful tool for managing and deploying Azure environments, ensuring the organization can maintain these compliance, security, and everything in a consistent fashion. Let's look at question number 87. How do you monitor the performance of an application using Azure Monitor Application Insight? So that's the question. Interviewer is trying to understand your knowledge on Azure Application Insights. First, let me help you understand what is this Azure Application Insight. So Azure Application Insight is part of Azure Monitor, is an extensive application performance management solution or a service that enables developers and IT professionals to monitor live application. It can help you track application performance, diagnose issues, and detect anomalies before they impact the end user. Let's look at some of the benefits. First key benefit is this will help you pinpoint performance bottlenecks and areas of improvement, leading to more efficient and responsive applications. Second benefit is application insights enhance your application reliability by diagnosing and resolving issues quickly, ultimately improving the user experience. And the third benefit is continuous monitoring. Azure Insights facilitate continuous performance monitoring in production environment, ensuring the application remains stable and performs optimally. Some of the example or the places where you can use it is in web application. You can monitor web application to ensure they are responsive and reliable, identifying issues such as slow page load time or any sort of failed transactions. Let us look into question 88. What is activity log in Azure Monitor and why is it important? So first, let me help you understand what is activity log. The Azure Activity Log provides detailed insight into operations performed on resources at the subscription level. It serves as a critical tool for monitoring and managing the health, performance, and security of your Azure environment. What are the key benefits of Azure Activity Log, or why is it important? So let's look at the benefits first. It offers you a centralized monitoring capability because it consolidates all activity logs in one place, making it easier to manage and analyze. Second, by monitoring admin operation, it helps you ensure that only the authorized changes are made to these resources, thus enhancing the security. Third is activity log facilitates early detection of issues, allowing for quicker remediation and minimizing downtime. Fourth is operational transparency because activity log provides clear visibility into who did what and when, ensuring accountability and operational governance. Some of the points which you can use to highlight the importance is Azure Activity Log provides you audit trail and compliance. It helps you troubleshoot resource behavior and it can help you detect suspicious activities as well. Let's look at question number 89. What is Azure Log Analytics and how does it enhance monitoring? First, let's populate the short answer for what is Azure Log Analytics. Azure Log Analytics is a powerful service within Azure Monitor which is designed to collect, analyze, and act upon log data from various sources. Some of the features are centralized data collection. You can use Azure Log Analytics to gather log data from various Azure resources. It could be in an on-premises environment or from other clouds into a single repository. Second, advanced querying. You can use the Kusto query language or KQL to perform detailed and complex queries on log data, enabling deeper insights. Azure Log Analytics provides you good visualization tools which offers workbooks and dashboard to create rich interactive visualization of log data for easy interpretation and analysis. On top of it, you get rich alerts and automated action mechanism which allows you to set up alerts based on log queries and automate action for proactive issue resolution. Let us look into question number 90. It's a multiple choice question. We are going to do a deduction. Which of the following is not a component of Azure Monitor from these four options? So we talked about Azure Monitor in a couple of questions ago. So if you are having any doubt, just read this reference or go back to the previous question. First, let's look into the first option, metrics. Metrics are part of Azure Monitor. Metrics provides numerical data about the performance and the health of your resources, enabling you to visualize trend and track performance over time. Next is logs. Logs is again part of the Azure Monitor. This helps you capture detailed information about events and activities in your Azure environment, allowing you to perform in-depth analysis and troubleshooting. Next is virtual network peering. This is definitely not part of Azure Monitor. Virtual network peering is part of the networking, and it's a network component to connect two different network together for communication. The fourth option is alerts. Alerts is definitely part of Azure Monitor, which helps you notify critical conditions or issues within your Azure resources, helping you to respond quickly and mitigate any sort of potential problem. So the correct answer, which is the wrong answer, because virtual network peering is not part of Azure Monitor. Let's look at question number 91. What is Azure Pricing Calculator and how does it help to in cost estimation? We already looked into the pricing calculator. This time we are going to look into different feature set. So pricing calculator is a free online tool which helps customers to help estimate the cost of Azure services based on your planned usage. Let's look at some of the key features of Azure Pricing Calculator. In the last Azure Pricing Calculator question, I think we looked at the features of Azure Pricing Calculator. Here we are looking at the benefits of Azure Pricing Calculator. Let's go through this one by one. First, it provides you a transparent billing model because this ensures that users have a clear understanding of the cost associated with their Azure deployments, promoting transparency and trust. Second, you can do a cost comparison. This helps compare the cost of different Azure services, enabling users to choose the most cost-effective option for their needs. Third is budgeting and forecasting. This facilitates accurate budgeting and forecasting by providing precise cost estimates, which can be crucial for financial planning and management. And you can get an example usage as well. For instance, a business planning to migrate its on-premises data center to Azure and can use Azure Pricing Calculator to estimate the cost for virtual machines, storage, and other necessary services, ensuring a comprehensive financial planning. And then you can export that out, include that in your project planning or getting different budget approvals to do that migration process. Let's look at question number 92. What is the Azure TCO calculator and how does it benefit business planning cloud migration? We looked into TCO calculator before, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview on that. So TCO calculator is a powerful tool which is designed to help organizations estimate the potential saving and financial benefit for migrating their workload to Azure. This uses the comparison of the cost of maintaining your on-premises infrastructure with the expenses associated with Azure services so that your businesses can take an informed decision about the cloud migration strategy. Let us look into the potential benefits of the TCO calculator. First, it can give you the potential return of investment understanding. By using the TCO calculator, businesses can gain a clearer understanding of the potential return on investment associated with moving to Azure. Second, this provides you cost saving opportunities. The tool helps identify areas where cost savings can be achieved, such as reduced capital expenses and operational efficiencies. Third, it can help you make informed decisions. With detailed cost comparisons and breakdowns, organizations can make more informed decisions about their cloud migration strategies. Finally, you can use the insights provided by the TCO calculator and can support discussions and planning around cloud adoption strategies, ensuring the alignment with business goals. Let's look at question number 93. What are the different types of Azure subscriptions and their use cases? So first and foremost, Azure offers multiple types of subscription to meet different business needs. On a high level, these are all the subscription type. They are free subscription, pay-as-you-go, enterprise agreement, Microsoft customer agreement, or dev test subscription. And each has different use cases. A free account is a trial account with limited free services for 12 months. And you get $200 for the first 30 days. This is ideal for testing and learning Azure services without any financial commitment. The second type is the pay-as-you-go model. This is billed monthly based on the actual usage, providing you a flexible option for businesses with varying demand. This allows organizations to scale their usage up and down as needed, paying only for what they consume. Then we have the enterprise or EA agreement. This is a customizable agreement for enterprises that commit to a larger or longer term usage of Azure services. This option typically includes bulk pricing discounts and additional enterprise level support. The next is the MCA. This is a modern contract for all Azure and Microsoft services. This gives you a simplified billing and unified contract for enterprises. The last one is the dev test. By the look of it, you already know that this is primarily used by developers for testing solution before rolling out into the production. Let us look into question number 94. How can Azure Cost Management help monitor and optimize cloud spending? So what is Azure Cost Management? Azure Cost Management is a native Azure tool that provides comprehensive solution for monitoring, allocating, optimizing cloud spending across your Azure environment, and it empowers organizations to gain meaningful insight into their cloud expenditure, like making informed decisions to drive financial efficiency. What are some of the use cases of Azure Cost Management? First, it enables departments or individual department to monitor their own spending, fostering accountability and efficient use of resources. Second, it helps project managers track budget adherence, ensuring that the project remain within the financial constraint. Third is enterprises or large organization in implementing chargeback and showback model to distribute cost fairly among different departments or business units. Question number 95. How does Azure reservations help in reducing cost and what services are eligible? First, what is this Azure reserved instance? So Azure reservations or Azure reserved instance offer discounted pricing by committing to use Azure services for a 1 year or a 3 year term. So it's either 1 or 3. They are designed to help organizations save significantly on their cloud cost by pre-purchasing capacity for long-term use. Let's look at some of the key points you need to understand. The first one is around discounts. Using this Azure reserved instance, you can get up to 72% compared to the pay-as-you-go pricing model. Second, what are the services which you can use to get it? You can only get reserved instance for virtual machines, Azure SQL Database, and Cosmos DB. Next, let's look into which all services you can get this reserved instance. You can get reserved instance for your Azure virtual machines, Azure SQL Database, and Cosmos DB. And this provides your organization great flexibility with the reservation because of the exchange and the refunds what you can get out of this commitment or pre-purchase. This will help you significantly save your cost. Additionally, this can help you with budget predictability, and you can easily use it for management and reduce your cloud spend. Question number 96. What is Azure Service Level Agreement or SLA, and why is it important? Let's populate the short answer. Azure Service Level Agreement or SLA is a formal document that defines the guaranteed uptime and performance standards of Azure services. Let's look into some of the important things you need to understand about Azure SLA. First, the risk management aspect of it. This helps in risk management by providing a reliable framework. This provides a basis for legal and operational assurances. Third is business continuity. This is critical for business continuity planning because you need to know about the SLA to ensure any sort of minimal disruption during your uptime. Let's look at question number 97. What are the different Azure support plans available and how do they differ? First and foremost, Azure offers multiple support plans. Let's quickly populate on a super high level what are they. So on the left hand side is what you see are the main type of Azure support plans. Basic, developer, standard, professional, direct, and enterprise agreement. Let's go through this one by one. What is this basic? Basic is free for all Azure users. Some of the key features are billing and subscription support, Azure status update, and documentation access. Second is the developer support. This is for non-production environment. Some key features are business hour access only and 1 hour response time for critical issues. The third is the standard support. This is for production workload. Key features are 24/7 access to support, 1 hour response time for critical issues, and consultation for architectural guidance. The next one is professional direct or pro direct. This is best for business critical environments. Some of the key features include priority access to support, 15-minute response time for critical issues, and proactive guidance from support expert. The last one is enterprise agreement or unified support. This is mainly catered towards large scale enterprises which provide you comprehensive support across all Microsoft products and services. Question number 98. How does Microsoft ensure compliance and security through Azure Shared Responsibility Model? First, let's go through Shared Responsibility Model. We have gone through this in the beginning. So this is a quick recap and further insights. A shared responsibility model outlines which security and compliance responsibilities are managed by Microsoft and which are managed by the customer. Let's look into the metric. If you look at it, the physical data center security is managed by Microsoft, and network control or for the Azure backbone is managed by Microsoft, wherein the customer manages the identity and access management, and the data encryption is in transit and at rest is managed by both Microsoft and customer. That's a shared responsibility model. And application level control is managed by the customer. So that's an explanation or example about the responsibilities. Let's look at question number 99. What happens if Azure does not meet its SLA commitments? If Azure fails to meet the SLA uptime commitment, the service credits are offered to compensate customers. These credits are based on percentage of downtime experienced in a billing cycle, and customers need to submit a claim within the required time frame. For example, a service with a 99.9 SLA, if availability drops below this threshold, Microsoft provides a percentage credits on a monthly bill. And these service credits are not refunds but discounts on future Azure invoices. So how do you claim these credit? First of all, you need to identify the downtime, and then you need to submit the claim, and you need to submit within the 90 days of the incident, and then you will receive these credits applied to your Azure services as a discount. The last question. So if you are with me so far, I first of all thank you so much for spending so much time in upskilling yourself, and I hope the information is valuable. If you have any feedback, please feel free to put that in the comment section or notify me somehow so that I can improve the future iteration of this. So let's go through the question. How can Azure Service Health complement SLA and support plans? First, let's understand what is Azure Service Health. Azure Service Health provides personalized alerts and guidance when Azure service issues affects you. This ensures that you are well informed and can take necessary actions promptly. Some of the key features include health advisories. You receive notifications about planned maintenance activities that could potentially impact your service. Another feature is service issues. You can get real-time alerts for ongoing outages or service degradation, which allows you to respond swiftly. Third is health history. You get access to logs and past incident and planned maintenance event for better historical insight and analysis. Fourth is actionable guidance. You can obtain detailed steps and recommendation to mitigate the impact of service disruptions. So if you can think of an example where during a planned maintenance event, Azure Service Health send you an advisory ahead of time detailing the expected impact and duration, so you can prepare accordingly. So that's the end of the 100 question. Please feel free to download these resources. Click on this link to access the extra resources. I hope the information provided was useful. I will see you on the next one. Take care.